Go live.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, corn dog lovers of all ages, welcome to In the Box with your hosts, Matt and Adam.
Feliz Navidad. Feliz Navidad. Feliz Navidad y próspero año y felicidad. Feliz Navidad. Feliz Navidad. Feliz Navidad y próspero año y felicidad.
What was that?
Okay.
Hey, Hannah, it's your show. Do the intro. You gotta welcome everybody to In the Box. No?
Hello, everybody.
There we go.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody. This hat is this. Okay, I can't do this anymore. Somebody has a much smaller head than I do. Insert joke here. So, welcome to MASL in the Box on the Christmas Eve show with our special guest Erik Bergrud and our very, very special guest Hannah. I think I need to change the name here.
Yay. No, Dad.
No, I guess Matt's not here anymore. We have a new host here. Lots of changes on the
Much cuter than I
Well,
am.
there is that. Matt, I guess Matt is here, but see him.
But who really wants to? I mean, who really wants to see me, anyways? Let's just.
My show.
It is your show.
So Hannah, what do you think
You know
about
what?
what do you think about Utica this season?
Good.
Good.
No.
What do you mean, no?
No.
Did they win?
No.
Did they win this weekend?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
How many times did they
I need
win
a
this
special
weekend?
guest. I'll be right back.
Okay. Thanks for staying. Hey Erik, how's it going?
It's good. It's good. What's going on? I was starting to worry about the picker wheel in the third quarter of that first Harrisburg Utica City game. I thought, that's it.
Henry doesn't want to come.
Okay.
And then they came back.
I was worried a
gonna
lot
get Henry.
about Utica in that first game. because especially the first goal looked like just this. It was a weird fluke goal, of course, but it just kind of looked the same.
All right, sit over there.
And then and then Wilkins did just. I was like, this is not going to work out, but he really stepped up. Definitely deserving goalie of the week by far.
They look more like the Utica of old, so
Yeah.
maybe things are starting to balance out a little bit.
No, Daddy.
I hope so.
Relax.
Hannah, did you watch any of the Utica game on YouTube?
Yeah, we watched
Yeah.
Saturday's game.
Okay.
Yeah, we ended up watching Saturday's game. What? Harrisburg. It was Harrisburg and Utica.
Yeah.
Utica won, remember?
Yep.
Yeah.
And I was able to watch it too. Because I didn't have anything else to do on Saturday.
That's right.
Watched it.
And I got nothing
I'm waiting
going
for
on
the
Sunday.
comments to
Yeah.
head up, right?
So, Tara's.
All three of us got bit by this bug. You know?
Yeah. But so far, one of us has rescheduled and one of us hasn't.
Hey, we made lemons out of lemonade, so we found out Friday that the game wasn't going to happen and then scrambled because we had our whole broadcast set up. The interviews, the Baltimore and Kansas City history, we had it all set up, so we had to slightly maneuver at the last minute and somehow made it work. But we'll see what we'll see, won't we?
Yeah. In case anyone hasn't heard, so Utica, we'll start with Utica first because that's the best news of all. Utica's rescheduled to some other date.
Wednesday, February 23rd.
Yes. Milwaukee has announced to social media and all of the ticket holders via email and on their website that Baltimore has forfeited the game and that the commissioner said it's a 3-0 win in favor of Milwaukee. However, that doesn't show up on the MASL site yet. It still says game postponed.
So who scored those 3 goals? Was that like a Matt Isold hat trick?
Close. It was Brad Beach assisting Ian Bennett, Alex Bradley, and Marcio on the first goal, and then Brad Beach assisting Brad Beach on the second goal,
And then Van McNeil, empty net.
Right, yeah, Van McNeil empty net in the third goal. It took them longer to score than I expected with no team to play against, but I think they did a good job.
It got a little testy in the box there the other day, I noticed.
It got so Eric, you've noticed there's maybe some passionate indoor soccer fans in the world, and I think what happened was the passion overran. There were some things said from both sides that probably both sides will absolutely refuse to want to say they take back, but probably wish they could have taken back. I think from our standpoint in Milwaukee, it's been 650 billion days until we've had a game in Milwaukee. Maybe not that quite, but it would have been 650 days between games, and we kind of felt that we were just making a run at playoffs and deep into the playoffs when COVID hit, and then without the 2021 season hitting. Cliff's here. Cliff and Lucy are watching their favorite analyst. Hannah, you're Cliff and Lucy's favorite analyst.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I appreciate that, Cliff and Lucy, but if I were in Mexico right now, I think I might be, I don't know, it's too late to be enjoying a sunset, but on the beach or something else, but that's great.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
So I thought about this because I kind of went back and forth. Should I jump in the conversation on In the Box? And I decided I had messages partially created and then I hit delete. But what came to mind was this guy, Hannah, from about 4 centuries ago by the name of William Shakespeare, who told this story about what happens if you pick a side and your side is always right. Ultimately, bad things happen at the end. That's William Shakespeare and Romeo and Juliet. And soccer fans are passionate and they want to believe that their side is always right and the other side is always wrong. But the truth is kind of this interesting thing, and I don't think we know yet what has transpired over the past week, and so I think we need to stay tuned for the league announcements. As you said, if you go to the MASL website, there's no change in the standings.
Right.
So Milwaukee's currently in third place behind Kansas City and St. Louis, but we'll see if and when that changes.
Yeah, that was. I think some of from the Milwaukee side, we're saying, well, we have 30 players available to play at any given time, and we have a number. There's the roster is only 26 officially, and we have probably another 10 that could play. And we've seen that in the past. Matt Isold's first game was Nick Verberg broke his hand early on in the season. Marcel Feenstra tore his ACL early in the season. We had Jeff Ritchie signed, and on a Thursday with 2 minutes left in practice, he tore his ACL. And Saturday morning, Isold signed, and Saturday at 2 p.m. or whatever it was, he played his first game with the Wave. But he'd been practicing with the Wave, so he wasn't a complete stranger. No, it's not like nobody knew who he was. And I think from what we hear, now we don't know the truth because we only hear what we hear, is that Baltimore only has 18 guys on their roster and doesn't have anyone else that can fill in. So from we're doing it this way standpoint, and I know a lot of people, I've run into this a lot of times in my life, it's like we do one thing one way, everyone else should do it our way because our way works. It's just not the way it works in some cities. I had a kind of little conversation with Ryan Hall today about Utica, and he said that it's a much different environment and city and soccer town than Milwaukee is, where we can pull in players from all sorts of the place. And he says they basically have the players on their team and then like a Sunday league. You definitely don't want the Sunday league guys to come in and try to play pro soccer right out of that because it's just definitely not the same game. But in Milwaukee, we have guys who are practicing every day with the team and who are trying to get that roster spot with the understanding that if anything like this should happen, they can jump in and play. Hey, Hannah, when's your album coming out?
What?
When's your album coming out?
You're working on a rap
You look
album?
like a rapper.
I am.
There you go.
I don't know.
Soon, I
I
hope.
gotta come up with a song first.
I think what was unfortunate
Right.
from my perspective,
Okay, I'll write something and then next time I'll
Perform it?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
I know in Milwaukee, Adam, that it had been so long since you had a home game, and there was all this anticipation just for soccer, let alone against Baltimore. I could speak for Kansas City. They had a great pre-sale here. We wound up for the exhibition against Wichita, which was sort of Wichita, sort of St. Louis, and sort of some Kansas City guys because it was thrown together the last minute. We had a great crowd here, but Comets wanted to play Baltimore. Anytime Comets play Milwaukee, anytime Comets play Baltimore, you know it's going to be a battle and everybody's going to leave it on the field. And that's what we were hoping for here, and it's just unfortunate for everybody involved.
Yeah, agreed. And I think, I mean, it's bad enough it's the home opener, but we had just lost in overtime to Baltimore in a 1-goal game after we came back and after we made a game of it and after, and then we lost in St. Louis. And everyone was just like, we need this to happen. This needs to happen. Yeah, it was. Or actually, no, we didn't lose to St. Louis yet. Sorry, got my weeks mixed up. But yeah, everyone's just looking forward to this game and like, okay, we open the season with 2 games against Baltimore, and we have the season opener, 650 days. I'm gonna keep mentioning that because that's a long time. You don't really realize how long it's been. We're coming up on our 2nd year of doing In the Box, which is kind of crazy if you think about it. Because it started like end of March, middle April or so, and that's going to be here before we know it, and the season's going to be almost over, and playoffs and everything. But yeah, so it's disappointing it happened. Some of the things that were said in the box obviously were probably not fair from either side to either side. But it speaks to the huge rivalry that this game is and has been and always will be.
So it brings to mind a 1987 reference. You knew I was going to bring one. So in my younger days, way younger days, 87, 88, somewhere around there, we, a few of us created what was supposed to be a national soccer boosters group called Soccer Solidarity. Love the name, Soccer Solidarity. And I think one of the challenges right away that we found then is, how do you get people who are passionate about their team to want to connect with people from other teams and sort of agree that we can let the animosity go? And it's like that in every sport you could imagine, in any other professional sport, trying to bring fans from other cities together and connect. And that's something that you try to do it in the box, which in a COVID season like last year, where there were only 7 teams playing, it was a little bit surreal. Now it's back to normal, and now the old rivalries are like right there in front of your face. So the passions are right there in front of your face.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
and I get that. And you know, I did see some of the comments point in the direction of Kansas City Comets social media, and you know, just for my part, I have years of respect for the Baltimore Blast. And in fact, I don't know if you caught our game on air against Wichita, but announced the passing of Carol Hale, not only Ed Hale's mother, but the biggest Blast fan for decades. And so at some point, you know, calmer heads, cooler heads prevail, and we realize this league, if we want this league to be successful, and I hope we all do, we all have to head in the same direction.
Yeah, and it's tough when you're up against teams that you really don't like. And like you said, yeah, last year was interesting because we were all we were all fans of all the teams, and well, maybe with the exception of one somewhere, but it was, you know, when we went out, Matt and I went out to Kansas City in December for the All-Star game. We were like instant Comets fans, and the whole organization, meeting you guys in person, meeting Bud and crew, it was just great. But now we're back, and now we have to hold that friendship together with also playing against each other, which is why I almost wear my Dallas shirt tonight. But then I realized the next game before our next show is Milwaukee down in Kansas City on Wednesday the 29th. So,
and then your home opener.
And then
Kansas City, right?
And then our home opener on our annual Christmas Eve game, which has gotten, I mean, the last few times it's gotten 6,000 plus in the arena, and it's going to be crazy. Still don't know what our situation is. My wife is still in her knee scooter, with her broken foot, so I don't know if we're gonna figure it out next week. But I will be there, absolutely 100% for sure, unless the game doesn't go on. Which, at this point, I would have never thought there was no way it could go on. But at this point, I think we have to just play week by week and game by game and figure out. There you go. Yeah.
Well, no, and it's serious. I mean, last year, for those of us who were involved with the 7 teams and managed through the protocol, and we took this very seriously. I say a lot that I don't read the comments, and so you might recall that Kansas City played Omaha this early in the fall as an exhibition, and so I was interviewing Bobby Jaffrey, who wound up scoring the game winner against Kansas City, but Omaha came in masks, and so I'm like, okay, I'll interview in a mask. And somebody in the comments on YouTube kind of took a shot at, she couldn't hear what I was saying, and yet we've been operating like this. Are we safe? Are we not safe? Who's tested? Who's not? And I take this very seriously. I wear this Comets mask around town, not only because I want to be an ambassador for the team, but it's also a reminder for me. I want to be on air every game. I don't want to be the one missing a game. I also don't want to be the one who got anybody sick. And so I wear this as a reminder that I have a responsibility to myself, to the organization, to the league. And I want to be on air when Ian Bennett and the gang come to town next week. So even though, you know, sometimes this is uncomfortable, I have a responsibility, and my goal is to make it all the way through this season.
Yeah, and forever, you know, for the rest of your life, and you know, not having. Yeah. I heard something. So this is kind of related to that. I heard something from my allergy asthma doctor, who said he was looking at a study based out of it might have been Sweden or Finland, where they said if you a person like forcibly talking, like not like this, but maybe in a bar, loud music, or maybe an arena with music and a soccer game going on, when they talk for 2 minutes, it releases a cloud of like 30,000 respiratory droplets that will hang in the relatively same area for 12 to 15 minutes before dissipating. And that's in a, your standard, air circulation. I know some of the arenas are boasting, we recirculate all the air every 3 minutes or whatever. But if you think about how the vaccine works, and I don't want to get really medical because I don't necessarily know, it's a shield. And it's, think of the old Star Trek where the shield's at 60%, Captain, it's at 50%. Well, if you sit in a cloud of that for 15 minutes.
Daddy, I farted.
Did that really make it on air?
It did.
It sure did. Please hold. And in fact,
That leaves the show.
hang on. You would think at 49 years in life that I wouldn't laugh at jokes like that anymore, but what's the saying? I still feel like I'm in my 20s. My sense of humor suggests that I'm 12. My body's wondering how I'm not dead yet. But anyway, the way it works, the vaccine is a barrier, but it can be weakened. And if you're sitting there in a 3-hour game with people shouting, or as my doctor said, spewing coronavirus in the air, it can be a big deal. I know at the Milwaukee Arena there haven't been any mask mandates or proof of vaccination or anything yet for Admirals hockey games, but I also know Admirals hockey games just got suspended or postponed. I think just through the Christmas and New Year break. But we'll see what happens with that, because that's going to be interesting. And I think in the, I don't know how many weeks we're in here, third or fourth, however you want to count it. If we already have essentially 2 teams, I know Utica now has positive cases. I know Harrisburg has positive cases. Of course, Baltimore. It may be another situation like last season where you don't see the same lineups every week. And I think that definitely hurt some teams. That definitely hurt St. Louis for sure. They didn't get their full lineup back until playoffs, and they just didn't have the chemistry there because they hadn't played together.
Well, I can tell you that Kansas City is taking this really seriously. I mean, anything's possible. There's breakthrough cases, but the Comets, having gone through everything last year, I think are taking the right attitude in terms of player safety. And we'll see. I mean, it's a league with teams in 2 countries. It's a league with teams in multiple time zones, and it's expecting a lot to compete in this league. So Nick and I, and we'll say this on air, we want everybody to be safe, and we hope for the best. And our goal is to be back on air next Wednesday. Waiting for IB26 and Alex Bradley to light it up again.
I predict a hat trick from each of them.
Wouldn't surprise me.
Wow.
Although my predictions so far have been really bad.
So is there something more enjoyable you want to discuss?
Yeah. What do you think of the Chihuahua Savage?
So I caught not full both games, but most of both games. I was impressed. So, I mean, obviously they have players with MASL experience. I thought it was really interesting, more so the San Diego game than the Ontario game. It was a 1-1 game until right at the end, and then San Diego, finished them off. I think it's going to be interesting for that team to gel. They have a lot of travel, but not as much travel as you would think. If you look at a map, in a way, they're sort of equidistant between Dallas and San Diego. But that's a team I think is going to give fits across the league. I don't think we have right now the one team where it's like, oh, they've got it locked up. there's a part of me that if Kansas City doesn't win this year, I would love to see Florida do it just to mess with the two of you. As the trolling ITB, let's let Florida lift the cup just to see how you would respond. But I don't even have a sense that Florida is it yet. That Ontario is going to be good. San Diego looks good, and I think what San Diego's done is they brought in some fresh legs and some younger players, because that was my concern for them coming out of last year, was if they had to play a full 24-game season plus playoffs. It's a young players game now, and trying to run up and down, up and down, up and down. That was my concern for that team, but I think they have a good mix of old and new. It looks like they've got some good chemistry. But yeah, I think Chihuahua is going to be a team to watch out for every game.
Yeah, it was interesting. The first Chihuahua game against Ontario, it was 3-3 until 9.5 minutes left in the fourth.
Mm-hmm.
And then almost the same with San Diego. It was until late in the fourth, or not late in the fourth, but until the fourth quarter, it was essentially a 1-1 game, and then they just took off. There were some phenomenal saves made by both goalkeepers, but Munoz really impressed me.
He looked really good, and for me, even more so in the San Diego game.
Yes.
They call standing on your head saves. So I think he'll be there. They'll keeping the team in games. The thing that with Ontario, maybe more so than San Diego, that's still a scary team. Even though they lost Charlie Gonzalez, if you look at the firepower there and how you try to defend the King, and then he can lay it off to Stinson or any other combination. They have so many weapons. They're De Leon, guys who can score goals all over the field. I think the one thing I noticed about Ontario, particularly against Florida, is if you kind of drop back and try to absorb, they're susceptible on the counter, I think. But they're a good team. They're a smart team. They're going to figure things out.
Yeah, that's
yeah.
Oh,
I know one person. If Florida won, they would be fine with. None of us.
Yeah. She has to go deal with the puzzle. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that may spell the end of In the Box if Florida wins the whole thing.
I don't know.
They bring the trophy up to Milwaukee, and it's like, here.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and we said this a couple weeks ago, is that the players really deserve it, because the players, we talk about this year after year after year of, oh, well, they had an easy schedule, they had a hard schedule, they had back-to-backs, they had whatever was given to you as a team. If your players and your coaching staff gets on the field and plays the best they can, they're doing what they're doing with the best that they're given. They don't make the schedule. The players don't, like Ian Bennett doesn't make the schedule and doesn't invent COVID and make Milwaukee sit the league out and go play for Florida. It wasn't his thing, so we can't, we can joke about him a while, but we can't really hold that against him. And a lot of the players, we make a lot of comments about, Florida's turf and the attendance and the stream and everything. It isn't the players' fault. I think we're advocates for every player in the league, except for maybe one number 19 somewhere. But that's a different story. And I'm slowly becoming a fan. Maybe a little. Until next Wednesday, we'll see what happens there.
Hey,
but yeah, I think there's no team that I really would not like to see win this thing. Obviously, I want it to be Milwaukee. Matt wants it to be Utica. You want it to be Kansas City. But every fan is going to be like that. No longer a free for all free agent fan. We had like the loner players and we had loner fans last season. We don't have loner fans. Everyone returns to home except for like Rochester and I think all the Monterey and Sonora fans are probably rooting for Chihuahua now. Mesquite fans are probably back rooting for Dallas.
I don't know about that, but yeah. What's interesting is we went from this single 7-team conference or whatever you want to call it to these new three 4-team divisions, and because of the way the schedule's loaded, if you can run the table in your division, you're in pretty good shape. But I think of what we found last year for sure with San Diego winning it doesn't really matter whether you're the number 1 seed, number 2 seed in the playoffs. It's, are you peaking at the right time? But with the challenges Dallas is facing right now, I would expect that Milwaukee, Kansas City, and St. Louis are thinking maybe we can start building up some points, and we'll see. You can't look past any team in this league for sure, but I look at the West, and you know, some people were downgrading Tacoma, but I think that's going to be a competitive group. And then Matt, in your area, I think Utica found out when everybody maybe had written off Utica that here you are with 2 wins with momentum, and who knows where you're going to land. So I mean, we'll see what happens. I know that Utica won the picker, yay for you, Matt. But if you were to ask me who's going to win the Ron Newman Cup, put me on the spot right now, I have no clue.
Yeah, it's tough to say right now. We could say something this week. Next week, it could be something different. It's too early to tell, I think.
I think it's way too early. It's
maybe everyone except Dallas has a chance, but.
Well, and I would say, so one thing we did our picks last week, I didn't realize Harrisburg was in a rebuilding phase again. And when they said that there were, half the team was new, which us too. I mean, if you look at the Milwaukee roster that we looked at over 1 week, it was exactly half the team was new. And I think,
and I mean, they some of the guys were from Rochester. Jeremy Ortiz and Michael Cunningham came over from Rochester. But yeah, you look. I mean, Tavoy Morgan went out to San Diego. That's a huge loss right there.
Yeah.
But yeah, some of the guys were new to the game. But I think Harrisburg kind of ran into the same issue Utica had. It was their first 2 games of the season.
Well, if you think 2 seasons
first
ago,
games in 20 months.
Well,
yeah,
pretty much every season, Baltimore kind of starts out a little slow. And their fans are just all doom and gloom. Oh, this is the year that we're going to lose. And I remember they were doom and glooming, and they won 3 championships in a row, and they were still doom and glooming the beginning of the season. Like, guys, have you never seen your team play a whole season? Because it goes like this, or however it looks on the screen, where it goes, you start kind of down here where everyone else starts, but you go a straight line up. And without, most teams are doing this, and Baltimore just heads straight up the whole way. And that's been the way since I've been watching this sport, has been the way they've done every year. And I think it's too early to tell for a lot of teams, especially even St. Louis has had a little bit of success in the beginning. That one game that I won't ever remember again because it's already out of my memory. No, it isn't. But they're high on that game, and it's like, well, we could sit here and make excuses, but it's a regular season game. It counts the same as any other regular season game, and they got it. And congrats to them. Dallas may turn around here with new coach. Cameron Brown just got signed today or yesterday, depending on how you want to look at how that went down.
Hey, watch that.
Well, it was funny because I checked the transaction sites, try to check them daily. And like the injury report and the discipline suspensions and things like that. By the way, congratulations to Derek Huffman for finally getting off of the suspension list. He will be in Kansas City Wednesday, as far as I know, so that'll be good. Maybe not to Kansas City fans, but that'll be good to Wave fans. He's your halftime.
I love talking to Huff, so
he's gonna be your halftime interview, right?
We haven't worked it out. We're gonna bring Nick and I need to talk. I know who one of the two is going to be. We're going to be bringing back somebody from the past of the Comets organization. And we've been doing this because it's the Comets' 40th anniversary, the Attack's 30th anniversary. We've been trying to thread the history through this season. We will the rest of the season. So, but we haven't talked about Milwaukee yet in terms of who we want to bring. I can tell you about Milwaukee that we're doing two retro uniform games here in Kansas City. One will be the old Comets rainbow jersey, which will be a missile throwback, but we're also doing the Attack, which is an NPSL throwback. And I'll lay credit for this one. I said, if you're going to do an NPSL throwback game, it has to be against Milwaukee because they were the only team that, well, I mean, yeah, Harrisburg, but we don't play them. But Milwaukee was the big rival in the NPSL days. So there will be a throwback game in early 2022 against Milwaukee. I think they're the 96-97 Attack jerseys they're going to wear.
Oh. Yeah, Milwaukee's doing a throwback jersey. I don't know exactly when that game is.
They can wear whatever you can.
But that should be interesting because I think a lot of people are looking forward to that.
Yeah, and I think that teams have found success that when St. Louis and San Diego played each other last year and both in throwbacks. I think that was not only a smart move, but something that is attempted to connect the generations. I think that there's one thing that I've heard you guys talk about is we can't just sit back and talk about the good old days because there's too many people who want to live in the past. But there's a way to connect the past to the present. It's just like this week is the 43rd anniversary of that first indoor game. And interestingly enough, Keith Tozer played on one team and Shep Messing played on another. So you can see the connections between what the game was and where it is now 4 decades later.
Yeah, definitely. I've always thought that you don't want to forget the past, but you want to celebrate it. But you can even glorify it, but you don't want to have that rule and come into every decision. And yeah, we know the fans are out there, and every single thing that comes up, they're like, "Yeah, but back in 1987, it was much better."
That's right.
It was much better because of this, and insert reason here. So yeah, that's how that usually works out. But
well, so the other thing, and I've been watching some of the feedback this week in Dallas. I think the challenge for the league now is you've had in cities franchises reclaiming the nicknames of storied past. That raises expectations. So if you're the Dallas Sidekicks versus the Dallas Socceroos or whatever, people hear Sidekicks and they think we win championships. And that was a team back in the day you didn't want to play against because everybody came back behind the ball. They countered well. And there's that dude who threw his shirt off all the time just to annoy the visiting fans. It's frustrating, I think, when you think back to it's like being a Cleveland sports fan in just about every sport, right? Right. Back in the day, we were winning championships in football and baseball and whatever else, and everything's compared to them. And so that's a challenge for this league right now, is that maybe there's too much emphasis on comparing, don't make a 1987 pick 1980X and today. I mean, things are just so different. There was no show like this in 1987.
Yeah, In the Box is revolutionary. But yeah, I always think.
Story.
Yeah. I always think about people saying, and it comes to the broadcast a lot, but like if someone is scrolling through channels or whatever, and they see a game and they see X broadcast and that's their first thing they see and they never want to come back, I look at that as every aspect of the game. Like if you see, the Dallas Sidekicks, they were a huge name back 30 years ago, and now you go see a game and you watch them put up 2 goals against a 12-goal loss, and their center circle thing, which I don't think we ever talked about, isn't. They got brand new turf and they repainted their logo and it looks worse than it did last year with the old turf on it. And you just see stuff like this, and it's little attention to detail, and any one of those little things can be explained away or can be brushed off and can say, well, whatever. But I kind of attribute it to like eating at a restaurant. Let's say you go in and you wait way too long for someone to wait on you, and then your drinks come out warm, and then your fries don't have any flavor, and your steak isn't done right. Any one of those little things can be excusable, but you pile all 10 of them on or whatever it is.
Okay.
and you're in just a horrible situation. And I think
Say goodbye
I don't
to
want
everybody.
anyone to have to witness that or have to experience that in this league and then say, "Oh, indoor soccer sucks because I went to a game once and this is what happened."
Well, the other thing, JP Telecamera has been extremely helpful for me, and he's helpful in a very subtle way. So I think, I mean, he said to multiple shows that the goal here is to get 30% better across the board. And in the last meeting he had with broadcasters, he gave us some suggestions in terms of what you should do, what you don't do. And what's humbling to me, he didn't call me out, but I have a bad habit on air that I think is cute, but it creates problems for me. And I noticed this last game against Wichita, even though I came to the arena with really good intentions, I'm not going to do this time. It's storytelling into a goal. So I have a tendency when I think there's a lull to say, I'm going to tell you a story. In this case, ironically, I was telling a story about JP Telecamera, right? I was talking about it's Taikito's birthday, and here's his connections to everybody, and I'm leading it out, and then there's a Comets goal. And so I think we all have room to grow. Nick and I joke about the goof ups that he has on air, or I have on air. And so I think it's everybody needs to get better. It's not just one city or one turf or whatever, but it's the self-awareness that, oh, I need to improve. It's just like the players, it's just like the coaches. You would hope everybody sees where there's a weakness in their game and they have to work on strengthening it. Sure. What I can't tell you is whether everybody has self-awareness and sees a weakness in their game. But what's been helpful for me this season already with JP Telecamera here is I can see where I can be better. And I hope that same message is being delivered by Shep, being delivered by Keith Tozer to the other parts of the league.
It's really interesting.
Not just the broadcast, but just in everything that the league does.
Yeah, I mean, because we've called you guys the gold standard broadcast. And when I've talked to other teams and other people from other teams, I say go watch a Kansas City game. And sometimes I get from the Wichita guys. They're like, I wish I had $500,000 on equipment to be like Kansas City or Milwaukee. And it's like, well, but is there anything you can work on? Or is it just going to be the excuse of, well, I can't do this because we don't have this $1 million camera. So that's just going to way it's going to be. And you have to find what works for you with the equipment and everything that we had. And keep in mind, we had to adjust. If JP, I guarantee you, if you were watching our broadcast, there were at least two things he would say. Remember when we had that meeting with the broadcasters and producers? I told you these two things, and you did them anyway. So, I mean, even with the resources, we're humans and we're going to make mistakes. I think that the issue is when we're honest about it and acknowledge, hey, we're going to try better next time. And I think that the league across the board, the broadcaster better. I think we didn't know going from last year's kind of all-star lineups to what would be with 12 teams. I think the quality of play, if you go to 2019 to today, I think it's much better in terms of the competition on the field. So I do think there's progress amidst COVID and all the craziness going on. Yeah, I think the problem that we have as humans is we're especially in the country we live in, of I want what I want as much of it as I can, and I want it right now. I think we're in a weird spot because this 30% is really hard to measure 4 week, a fourth of the way in. So if you look at that as a solid line going up, how it works in this, we're only at the 3% level right now of that 25 or 30%, and it's going to continue to grow throughout the season. But I think there's some people, and I've heard rumblings of, I haven't seen any changes, and I even mentioned it that last week. I'm surprised there aren't as many. The broadcasts aren't any better than I really saw last season.
Oh, I would disagree. I mean, if you're looking technically, I'm not going to challenge you on that, but in terms of the announcing, St. Louis, significantly better.
Yeah.
Florida, I learned a lot. So that they changed color commentators this year. I learned a lot just listening to him read the game in terms of shift changes, how you pace your time, even talked about aerobic versus anaerobic activity. I learned a lot. And I texted Philly after that first Ontario game. I said, if you were to go back on Facebook, because you can, all the games from last year are archived, listen to that first game of last year and listen to you guys, your first game against Chihuahua. It is night and day in terms of how comfortable you are announcing. And so I think if you were, part of it, Adam, is from where you benchmark. But I mean, for me, I see a lot better. The challenge is there are a lot of external circumstances that make life hard. Competition for resources. Are people actually going to go to arenas this year? We still don't know what the fear factor is of people going into indoor arenas, right?
Right.
We don't know what success looks like or should look like. Do you grade with a curve or what?
Yeah, I looked up, I grabbed attendances. Now, granted, and here we are as indoor soccer fans, there's always an excuse for everything, and there's always a reason for everything. So games typically before Christmas aren't the greatest as far as attendance and as far as things go. It does look like attendance is down across the board from the 2019-2020 season. I wasn't including, obviously, the COVID season because that didn't, even the teams that had fans didn't count them. Some of them were down by a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Like San Diego, twice as much, and I don't know how much of that to attribute to the fact that San Diego's attendance has kind of been nosediving as it was. And I certainly don't want to use this as a benchmark, because I think this year, and somebody said, oh, this will be a normal season and now we can start to benchmark what the changes have done to attendance. And I said, no. I said, we're still in a COVID year as far as I'm concerned, and I don't think we should take anything that happens this season and base your attendance numbers or anything on that. I think it's too early to tell, and it's too early.
Yeah.
Now that said,
Adam,
yeah.
But before we go any further, Hannah wants to say goodnight to everybody.
Oh.
She's going to bed.
Good night, Hannah.
Good night, Hannah.
Bye.
All right.
Bye.
Love you.
Well, on San Diego, they're building a new arena, so long term they're in, right? Which I think is great. They're also doing things I wish I had the time or the energy to do, like there's shows on Twitch with Craig and Jerry, and I mean, there's things that different markets are doing really well. The Striking Fury, I wish I had the time and energy to do what they're doing there. So I mean, I appreciate what you're saying about a gold standard, but I see things in other markets that I wish we had the ability to do here in Kansas City. And so everybody's just kind of finding their place and finding their identity, which I think is great, because ultimately you don't want 12 clones of one model.
Right.
You want each team on the field and off the field to have a different identity, which makes it unique and special.
Yeah, no, I agree. So speaking of identities, Kansas City this year, some visa issues still.
We call those paperwork issues.
Yeah. So Lucas is back. Any words on Rian, or who was the other player?
So Benji Monreal,
Benji.
who Comet signed 3-year contract from Wichita. The other one who's involved, who knock on wood, hopefully will get resolved soon, is Felipe Abreu, who he was awesome in the Central Cup. And by the way, if you're awesome,
Is this the first time you've mentioned this word?
Nothing matters other than the Central Cup. And since we're talking about the Central Cup, I really think that's what has made John Sosa a better player this season.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, there you go. It's the Central Cup prowess. But Felipe Abreu is the third remaining person, and I think he's the next goal scorer that they're waiting on to get clear. But what happens? You're missing players, and Leo Gibson, who was not planning to roll himself out the way he has, is leading the league in scoring. So the Comets have options. They have depth. And in the midst of everything going on in this country with COVID, I think a team with depth stands a really good chance of remaining standing at the end.
Yeah, and I think I mean we've seen that overall, just overall fitness level, not even including COVID. I think the fact that there's so many weird little injuries. Andre Hayne in the first quarter with a calf injury. There's we signed Kevin Naranjo, who's already out, hasn't played a game yet because of a calf injury. I think there's going to be more of those. I think the NFL likes to call them the soft tissue injuries that will happen just because of the level of, and maybe we're far enough in that they won't anymore. But I think early on in the season we had a lot of chances for those things to happen.
I think the teams that played last year have an advantage for sure. And I think you noticed that even if you had guys who were on loan last year coming back, it's still playing 60 minutes up and down as a team. There's an adjustment there. But I think the one thing the Comets did really well in the offseason is they had voluntary workouts that the guys bought into that. And so they came into the official training camp ready to go. The Comets were so close in the semifinals. I mean, oh, so close. And you watch the broadcast, and I think I said it at the time, they just ran out of legs. So they were up 1-0 in the mini game, and then that was it. And you see defenders just blowing past the Comets midfielders. And so I think that there was a desire to take care of some unfinished business this season.
Yeah, there's always you always see the thing that you need to fix, and kind of going back to Milwaukee, it was always like, well, the Blast out defends the Wave, and then they said we're going to play defense like the Blast does, and sure enough, that was a championship year. And I think both KC and Ontario have realized, and we saw Ontario start slow both last season and the 2019-20 season, and then ramp it up. And I think Ontario just started at a higher level this season.
Yeah, they're a team that I have a lot of respect for, and it's not just name the names up and down.
Right.
They have quality on multiple lines, and in goal.
Yeah.
In goal is just unbelievable. You have one of the best goalies of all time, and you have the reigning MASL goalkeeper of the year.
Right. One of the future best goalies of all time, yeah.
Right, and something that you guys on the show talked about last year is, and I think maybe it was more Gio than anybody else, what do you do with these 2-game weekends when you can rotate your goalies? That is such an advantage that they have over other teams that you have 2 starters there.
Right. Yeah, it's and some teams, Milwaukee used to do that with 2 actual starters and not even really a primary and a backup, and kind of got away from that. But it's scary to see, because last year it was Toth and Waltman, and this year it's Toth and DeLima. So yeah, it's they're going to be tough.
So speaking of goalies, what are these cryptic emojis that Josh Lamos is his hourglass coming soon emojis? Is there any breaking news you can share as I'm getting ready for next week's game?
There will not be any news for next week's game about goalkeepers, as far as I know.
Okay.
When we talk to coach, I want to be careful here what I say. Based on our interview with Coach Jules a couple weeks ago, they've requested for Josh Lemos specifically, what do they call it? RFE, request for evidence. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know what that was until I was told that term, and I went and searched, and it's a pretty standard thing that's asked in the visa process. They just want more evidence of why things are needed. The problem with that is it delays it a little bit more. So they have told Josh, first week in January, we hope to have more news. But at the time, they didn't have any news until then. And that was right around Thanksgiving. So that was kind of a bummer. But here we are with one fewer game and one fewer week of things that he's missing. And we may wind up in the beginning of the year with Josh back in the States in Milwaukee. Hoping. Right. But there's no real news on that yet. Chino and Isaac Pereira are in the same position as well. The Wave did release Robert Renault. I heard that he wanted to just stay in Canada. Wasn't interested in coming back, so that's what happened there. It was still an issue with a visa, But I think what happened is he realized, you know what, this is going to be so hard to get figured out anyway for whatever reason. Maybe I'll just stay up here and that. So that said, Milwaukee has goalkeeper issues right now. Love Matt Perella. We interviewed him. He was a great person to talk to, chat with. I don't know if it was a chemistry thing, lack of chemistry, but there were some issues there. And I think Cliff said too much tequila. Good night, guys.
Nice.
Was it Califino tequila, Cliff, or? But yeah, I think we're very concerned in Milwaukee from a fan standpoint about goalkeeping. I know there have two other guys that are fairly new to indoor, definitely new to the MASL level indoor, who could step in, and there might have been a talk with a former Wave fill-in goalkeeper, seeing if he could be available later on this season. But right now we're hurting. Now we're getting back Huffman on defense. I don't know where Andrew Hain is, if he's still out or not. Naranjo may or may not be there. Andrew Wiedebach is out. He tore his MCL right before preseason, or right before the season started. He was looking at 6 to 8 weeks, so that could be late January or so. So, and then just more experience for the guys who have been playing.
Right.
Is gonna really help. The more they play together, the more they're going to be better together. And maybe this home opener off will help some chemistry.
And then UCFC, you have some interesting pieces there, Matt.
It's interesting, to say the least. I mean, we're going through the same thing as every other team. I mean, injuries are biting us. And Noah Bassi's was out for the last couple of games. Should be back when they go to Florida for 2 weeks, which is weird. But visa issues. I think if you look at all of the visa issues right now, I think the most interesting one, in my opinion, is Darren Toby. He's been in the league for years. I mean, he has a home here, and yet he still has to go through the whole thing. So he's kind of been an assistant coach to Ryan Hall, and hopefully that gets fixed. Those two guys on defense are a huge loss. But yeah, with what we've got right now, I think you're starting to see them turn a corner. We saw that on Saturday. Friday night, first half, I was kind of, okay, are we going through this again? And then they turned that corner in the third quarter, and I said, okay, I think we're good.
It was definitely helping to talk you down first half in that game on Friday.
Yeah, it's been a tough few weeks, but I think it's righting the course, or righting the ship, and but yeah, this schedule doesn't get any easier. I mean, you look at it: 2 games against Florida, and then 2 against Baltimore, then Milwaukee, then Ontario, San Diego. I mean, it's just, the list goes on and on. So.
None against Kansas City, so there you go.
Yeah, nothing against Kansas City. We get St. Louis and Milwaukee.
Yeah. So I know my hour is almost up. I would be remiss if I didn't put in a big plug for anybody who was on the fence and thinking about coming to Kansas City in January. So the United Soccer Coaches Convention is going to be here in Kansas City, 3rd week. On that Thursday night, my broadcast partner, Nick Vassos, is going to do an interview, past, present, and future of indoor soccer, with Shep Messing, Keith Tozer, and JP Telecamera. That's going to be pretty cool. And then on Friday, the Comet's going to host a meet and greet at Johnny's Tavern, which is right across the street from T-Mobile Center, where they'll be playing Saturday night. I am going to wear my 1982 or 83 LA Lasers pullover to that event, just because there's who knows if there's any Lasers alumni who are going to be at the soccer coaches convention. And then we'll be downtown Kansas City at the T-Mobile Center, used to be the Sprint Center, Tacoma Stars, Kansas City Comets on Saturday night. And that's January 22nd, and we may have some surprises for you that evening.
Can't wait for that game. That's going to be fun.
Yeah, that's gonna be a really good game. I might be busy that weekend. I don't know yet.
Nothing to announce yet?
Nothing to announce at this time.
Okay. We may have a special in the box show that week.
Awesome. And you're in great hands with Jonathan. I was out in LA Labor Day weekend and had a chance first to meet Jonathan in person at an LAFC Sporting Kansas City game, and then later that weekend Philly and Panda. So I have a lot of respect for that broadcasting team, and Jonathan's a great guy. And Araceli wants to know, hopefully we will see In the Box in town for the convention. I think that's up to these guys.
Yeah.
Things. Yeah.
You can bring in guests. You don't have to be here.
Well, so there's the problem. I was seriously thinking. So I was thinking about going to. We have a whole bunch of plans that got screwed up for this.
Why don't we
year.
just, you know what, Adam? Why don't we just say it? Why don't we just? Do you want to let the cat out of the bag? Maybe, possibly.
Where's the bag?
I don't know.
I have a
Somewhere
Santa
around
hat.
here.
Is there a cat in here?
Yeah. No.
We may or may not be hosting a refugee from Utica for the January 21st weekend.
Awesome.
And Matt too. No, it looks like Matt's coming into town. Will be staying kind of with us. We don't have a guest room or anywhere he can stay in the house, so it either may be a couch or we're going to put him up at the hotel. It's like 16th mile away from our house.
Or they'll just have me walk to the airport to get my flight home. Whatever.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of options there, and if you want to kill a couple hours, a good walk for 35 miles across the interstate, that should be a good way to, in January in Wisconsin, that should be a good way to kill it. So Matt's going to be in town. I was thinking about the coaches convention and things, and I know Gio was thinking about it. I think we've made it kind of public that Gio and In the Box have kind of parted ways. He's always welcome as a guest, but as long as a standard third member, it's not. He's just too busy with everything else going on, but we'll definitely have him on for sure. But I think the weekend is probably not going to happen for the coaches convention.
You never know, though. We'll see.
Yeah, we might be able to do a show. We could simulcast. We could do a show here, just shoot it over there over the internet.
We can figure something out for sure. Well, as always, thanks for having me on. I think this is my third go round, and keep doing what you're doing to support the game and the league, and we'll see what Milwaukee has to bring next week.
Yeah, we'll see if we'll have you on next week or not. If how Milwaukee does.
So this is like a game-dependent decision, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's it has nothing to do with any. It's completely out of all of our controls. But
Wait. I think I could make the final decision, right?
Maybe, yeah.
Like if Erik wants to come on, he can come on. Like I don't think he needs your permission. I'll say it's okay.
I run the whole technology behind this thing, so yeah.
Whatever.
All right, Erik, we'll definitely have you on again this season for sure. Thanks for being a friend of In the Box, and
yes,
thank you for all you do. And we will. I will
happy
expect
holidays to you and yours.
Yes, happy holidays. Not Happy New Year yet because we haven't gotten there yet, but I'm fully looking forward to the first troll comment within the first 2 minutes of the broadcast on Wednesday night.
Oh, there's going to be something. I just have to work my way to see if you listen to the last broadcast. I took a dig at San Diego and Milwaukee, maybe even Baltimore, about never winning the Central Cup. So I just have to figure out what it's going to be this time.
Yeah,
Well, as long as you didn't mention Utica, that's fine. Okay.
Yeah. No,
If
I.
you want to play in the Central Cup, you can play in the Central Cup.
That is true. We haven't won the Central Cup.
But we never hear Utica bashing Kansas City, so you're safe for now. It's all these other teams that seem to have an issue with us.
That won't happen.
All right.
We have the same turf, so I mean.
That's right. Right. All right, I'm leaving.
All right. See you later, Eric. Have a good night.
Take a time out.
We're taking a time out. We'll be back.
Time out.
And we're live again. I think. Can everyone see us? Yep, I think we're good. Mr. Reimer, welcome to In the Box. Live all the way from, I don't know where you live, somewhere in California.
I am in the beautiful San Fernando Valley, California. Gentlemen, thank you so much for having me on. This show is an institution. I absolutely love what you guys do for this game. You know, I do a podcast for MLS LAFC as well, so I know exactly what it's like to be on your side of this, and bless you for doing this. It is endless, tireless, often thankless work, and I applaud you guys for doing this. Absolutely fantastic stuff.
Oh man, thanks a lot. Really
What a way to start this.
Yeah, I think we're done. Now when I bring the,
I think we're good, and
thank you.
And that's a wrap.
Have a
All
good
right,
night. Yeah,
great
thanks
job.
for going on. No, I apologize we haven't had you on earlier on the show. So we went through the whole COVID season, and we talked to Philly and Panda. We never got a chance to get you on. And then
The much better looking portion of the Fury broadcast, Philly and Panda, so I don't blame you there.
you're the taller one.
That's true. That's true. I
How
will
are you?
take the
Like
height
6'6",
competition.
6'7", something like that.
I'm 6'4", 6'4",
okay.
but I stand next to Philly, and it makes me look taller because he's so short. So I know
So
you're in the
Adam,
comments,
picture-
Philly. I love you, brother.
picture-
I'm just ragging you.
picture Jonathan. Jonathan and I are the same height, so there you go.
Yeah, but I pictured you
So
as
he's
about
like-
5'6" before I met you in person, and it was just weird.
That is true.
Even when you told me you were 6'3", I'm like, nah, I don't believe that. Like, I can't believe that. And then I saw you in person. I'm like, okay, I believe it now.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, we had all the issues with, is the show going to go on? Is the season going to be over? What's we going to do during summer? And then we talked about having you on with the whole
Slippery balls
incident, and then just for some reason never did. And then summer came by, and it was like, do a show every once in a month or whatever, and now you're here. So now the show is yours. So grateful you were able to join us.
Thank you. Sorry, I was a little late getting on. I was racing home from work. A heck of an act to follow. I mean, you put me on after Bergrud. My goodness, man. It's like when you go to a concert and you really want to see the opening act, and then you're like, man, do I even stay around for the headliner? So, for everyone in chat right now that's hanging on, I appreciate you. Thank you.
Well, originally, so it's funny because originally we were going to have just you on, but we've kind of moved the show. The show used to start at 8:30 Central, and we moved it back, which is 9:30 Matt's time. But it's all about me. So, we do that in my time zone because that's just kind of the way it's worked. But for you, that's, now we moved it back to 7:30 Central, which is 5:30 your time. I didn't want you to take a day off of work to come on our show because that would be ridiculous. I would not expect me to do that, much less anyone else. And, we've had shows of Matt driving home through the snow and the darkness and everything in the past. So Erik said, hey, if you want me to come on Thursday and we can talk about some of the things that have happened. And that was right after the whole postponement, cancellation, forfeit, whatever you want to call it, that happened with Baltimore. I figured, you know what, that'll give you an extra hour to get, to go on. There's no following anybody. Everybody's equal on this show except for maybe, me.
Well, I think our main guest. I mean, you got to look at Hannah, and then pretty much everybody else.
Right, exactly. Right. That's where I was getting. That's where I was going at that.
Yeah.
I was trying to pay attention on my drive home, and it looks like I've already missed her. I don't get a chance to say hello or wish her a good night, but please send her my well regards.
She's probably awake.
She is much more, much less camera shy until she realizes she's live talking to people. And then she just freezes up.
Great for her to get it out of her system now. By the time she's older, she's going to be perfectly ready to, become the next sideline reporter / play-by-play person. So
also join up in the Zoom generation, grow up in the Zoom generation and everything too. Whereas, before COVID, really, there weren't a lot of video calls that went well. They were rough, to say the least.
Yeah, I feel like this entire generation of kids that have learned digitally, where their classroom is a bedroom and they don't have that social interaction, but they do have, the multimedia experience. It's going to be fascinating just to see how that plays out once these kids are older, as to how that affects them and, how they're more comfortable, obviously, with the digital screen. But is that going to affect the interpersonal skills at this developmental age? I mean, kind of a grand experiment playing out across our youth right now.
Yeah, I have a soon to be 22-year-old, and
so you're through the worst of it then. All right.
So, well, I have an 18-year-old too. So my my 21-year-old is going on 12, and my 18-year-old is going on 35. That's kind of how that works out. It's been like that the entire time. But when my 21-year-old was 5, we got some basic computer stuff. I mean, this was 2005, and she was able to move the mouse and keyboard and do. I was doing a lot. My IT career spanned a lot of different things. I was doing a lot of end user small business computer support, where I go around to different companies that had 100 people in it or whatever, and the main finance guy was the guy who was dealing with all the IT stuff, and some of the guys were close to retirement, and I made the comment, I'm like, wow, my kid uses the mouse better than most 50-year-olds can, and all it is a thing with 2 buttons on it, and you move it around, and you click on stuff. It's just the motor skills were just there, and that just it wasn't a skill that our generation would grow up learning. Just wasn't there unless you were a computer guy like I was, which we didn't even really have mice until I was out of high school already and kind of into the workforce. So it's kind of funny how that happens. So speaking of how we got into stuff, how did you get into soccer first of all, and then into broadcasting, into indoor and the whole thing? How did that come about for you?
All right, so I hope you're ready for a long-winded, emotional, perhaps oversharing story here. But
Absolutely.
my journey to MASL was an absolutely wild journey. So why don't we rewind the clock a little bit, and we'll just start about like the beautiful game in general. So my first experience with soccer, quote unquote, I was really born in that dead era for United States soccer, right? So when I was a kid, there was no professional soccer in the United States. So like most of us, I followed every 4 years through the World Cup. My grandparents, fresh off the boat, Germans. So in 1990, when I was a little kid, we all packed into my grandfather's smoky living room, and we all sat down and watched the World Cup. Now, if you remember the 1990 World Cup, that ended particularly well for the German team. So my first experience ever watching soccer was to see my team win a World Cup when Die Mannschaft hoisted the cup in 1990. So I got a little spoiled, to say at the onset there. The United States really didn't have a relevant team. And so everyone I knew that was into soccer either supported a European club or supported a team that they had heritage ties to, right? So it's very logical for me to support Team Germany, obviously with a last name like Reimer, it's a pretty German last name, right? So it made obvious sense, although 23andMe has completely destroyed my identity in that regard. As it turns out, I'm actually only like 15% German. Nonetheless, my entire upbringing, I was raised to think I was German. So 1990 World Cup, I'll remember vividly them winning the World Cup because my grandfather felt it was so important that we all toast and celebrate. And at 7 years old, it was quite an argument between my parents and my grandfather as to whether or not I was going to be allowed a very small pour of Schlade Kirschwasser Snaps, which is a cherry brandy. And so finally, my father lost the argument, and I was given this tiny little quarter-ounce pour of German cherry brandy, which is the most aggressive liqueur one could possibly give the small child, and it made me absolutely sick at one taste, and that was my first experience with soccer. So I started following a lot of the German national team players, and that sort of naturally led me to, maybe you can see it over here, becoming a fan of Arsenal, because many of the famous German national team players played for Arsenal, and once in a blue moon you could catch an Arsenal game on TV here in the US. And so that sort of picked up, but I really was a diehard baseball fan, bleed Dodger blue, and you could watch every single one of those games. We would go to 15, 20 games a year because you could afford to do that back then, and it was only a couple hours up the road from where I grew up in San Clemente, which is about halfway between LA and San Diego. And so I really kind of checked in and out of the soccer world, and it wasn't until 96, 6 years later, that we started to have MLS. And so I started going originally to LA Galaxy games around 96. And it never really was something that I felt very passionate about. I have this sort of ingrained allegiance to any Los Angeles sports team. And so I was like, well, they're the LA team. I have to support the LA team. But I would go to games, and it was not a fun experience to go to games. And I kind of quickly fell out of domestic soccer. And really wasn't paying a whole lot of attention to what was going on domestically. I was paying far more attention to the German national team players, the U.S. national team players, and Arsenal FC during that time. LA found itself a second professional team right around the time I moved out of Southern California and lived in Northern California for a while, where my father lives. And so I was checking on with Chivas USA, and I really had some hopes that franchise was going to grow to become something bigger and better than what we'd had with Galaxy, which, the product on the field was very successful, but the active support in the stadium and just the experience of going to a game was always pretty lackluster. And Chivas USA really had some dynamic, active, fun, Barra-style support, which I really got into. But, of course, I was living out of the area at the time, so I didn't get a chance to attend many games. And then right when I moved back to Los Angeles, Chivas USA folded.
Of course.
So right around this time, I caught wind that there was going to be a new MLS franchise launching in LAFC. And I got really excited that there was going to be something different. I knew a lot of the active support involved in Chivas USA was going to be a part of LAFC, that it was going to be a stadium in downtown, dynamic ownership. a lot of really fun stuff happening at the onset. So I kind of dove headfirst into the LAFC world in MLS. And I was completely wrapped around the supporter experience and everything that was going on with LAFC. But I had no desire to be anything other than a fan. I would show up on game day, cheer my lungs out. I sit in the supporters section. I have a really great time doing it. But I never really had a desire to do anything public facing with the franchise. And it wasn't until something absolutely horrible happened in my life that I was sort of thrust into that moment. So about 5 years ago, when LAFC was first starting off, I was dating the manager of the Starbucks who worked across the street from the business that I was running at the time. We had a pretty fantastic relationship. Things were going great. And June of that year, the first year LAFC was around, she and I were due to move in together on June 1st. So we had, she had a daughter from a previous marriage. We had already picked out all the decorations for her daughter's room at my house. My current roommate had found a job in Seattle and was moving out. So it was perfect. Right as my roommate was moving out, my girlfriend was going to move in. Fantastic. So I get up the morning of June 1st and I'm heading to U-Haul to go pick up the U-Haul truck when I get a call from the family that she was in a coma and had been rushed to the hospital.
Oh, wow.
So that was a pretty traumatic moment. I really didn't know how to respond. I didn't know what to do. I didn't really have any personal experience with how this kind of stuff would work out. And so I didn't know what to expect. And so after the first week or so, you kind of figure like, Hollywood, they're just going to wake up. They're going to remember every single thing. And everything's just going to go back to normal as soon as they wake up, just let the doctors do their thing. Well, and the weeks kind of started rolling on and she wasn't making any progress. And so her mother really, really believed wholeheartedly in the power of prayer and prayer circles and getting more people to sort of concentrate on it, and asked me, can you please do what you can to utilize your social media presence and your association with any of the various circles you're in to try and start, some prayer groups. And so I reached out via social media to some people in the LAFC culture. And so I had tagged the team in a few social media posts. And I had reached out to a couple of the podcasts around LAFC as well, too. The two biggest podcasts at the time were Heart of LAFC, which at the time was run by Jerry Jimenez. You may know that name. He's from Soccer's Overtime. Yep. Now works for the San Diego Sockers.
He's been very busy and very active in the box lately. We welcome
absolutely.
That. Thanks, Jerry.
Great guy. I absolutely love Jerry. One of the best people. And this other show called Defenders of the Bank. Defenders of the Bank was run by Philly and JR, two very charismatic, outgoing individuals within the LAFC world. And so through the course of that whole experience, I started to meet a bunch of the people involved in the LAFC multimedia world, whether it was team broadcasters, team PR people, or all these people associated with LAFC podcasts. And so I eventually got to meet Philly and his wife Panda, JR and his girlfriend Nina, who run Defenders of the Bank and what was then called Mid-Center Chicks, but has now been rebranded as Angel City Chicks, which is their podcast that Panda does with JR's girlfriend Nina for Angel City Football Club, the new NWSL team in LA. So that's how I ended up meeting Philly. And over the course of the time in which my girlfriend was in the hospital, she was in a coma and in the hospital for about 100 days. And when she woke up, severe brain damage. So I would bring her to games in a wheelchair, and then eventually she was out of the wheelchair, and she sort of became like a figure that people around the LAFC world knew of her and knew of me, having been through the experience. And so I got asked to be a guest on a different LAFC podcast called Shoulder to Shoulder. And Shoulder to Shoulder was a brand new show that was just getting started. And their whole point was they wanted to tell fan stories. And so they would reach out to people who had had experiences or influence with the club. And so on their 5th episode that they had ever done of this podcast, they invited me to come on and sort of share the story of what I had been through. And so I said, sure, no problem. I've never really done anything like this. So, let's just kind of see how it goes. I'd love to join you. And they said, okay, here's the address at where we record. Let us know if you can come over. Turns out the address was 2 blocks from my house. So I was like, well, this is perfect.
Yeah.
I live 2 blocks away. I can walk over there. So I picked up Mandy and we wheeled her over, and I did an episode of Shoulder to Shoulder podcast. And about 40 minutes through the episode, they paused recording and they were like, dude, your voice is perfect. Would you like to do this permanently and be a co-host on this show? And I was like, well, gosh, we just got through talking about like a really, really emotional subject, and I was feeling pretty vulnerable about it. And I was like, let's do one more episode and feel it out and see where it goes. That was episode 6. We're well over 100 episodes now, and I've co-hosted that show ever since, and was really embraced by what we call the LAFC pod fam, or all the various podcasts that are around LAFC. And as a result, I became really, really good friends with JR and Christian from Defenders of the Bank. At this point in time, I had no idea indoor soccer existed. I'd never heard of the Fury. I'd never heard of the Soccers. I'd never heard of the Bolts, the LA team we had prior to that. I'd certainly never heard of the Brookhaven Truckers or the St. Mary Celtics or anything else throughout the, MASL, PASL, any of that kind of stuff was completely off my radar. And I'm a huge sports fan. I'm watching Sports Center every week. I would, follow Dodger games and Laker games religiously. I would follow my local MLS action and international soccer. And it never registered on my radar that indoor soccer existed until LAFC signed a player from the Ontario Fury. So Adrian Perez shows up at an LA game, and they started calling him Indoor Adrian. And, there was all this talk about, he came from indoor soccer. And I was like, well, what the heck is indoor soccer? I didn't even know it existed, right? So then I kind of started watching some games and checking it out. And Philly dove into it head first. He went to a game and absolutely fell in love with what was going on. And so he started doing the official podcast for the Ontario Fury, Striking Fury. And so through Striking Fury and supporting Philly and listening to his podcast and just hanging out with them, I kind of got to know a little bit more about the indoor game. And he was really the one who introduced me to it. So shortly thereafter, the Ontario Fury decided that they wanted to shake up their broadcast team. And so they were really happy with what was going on with Striking Fury and everything that Philly and Panda were doing. So they reached out to Philly and Panda and said, would you guys like to be the broadcast team for the Ontario Fury? And Philly was, it's a dream come true. He was absolutely ecstatic about doing it. Panda, because of her obligations, really felt like, sideline reporter was a better job for her. So originally the Fury had hired Philly to be the color commentator. They were going to stick with someone they already had to do play-by-play. Panda was going to do sideline reporting, and they were looking for someone else to help out with player interviews. So Panda would be doing sideline reporters with the fans, and they were looking to hire someone who would be interested in interviewing players. So, of course, Philly reached out to, not me. Philly reached out to his broadcast partner with Defenders of the Bank, JR, and asked JR if he was interested in joining the broadcast team with Philly. JR is a school teacher. He runs a podcast. He has a lot of other stuff going on in his life. He coaches as well, too. And he ultimately really didn't have the time to do it. So I was second choice, just like, most of the women in my life would say. I was the next best alternative. So Philly reached out to me and said, hey, you do a great job at reacting to what someone is saying and asking the next question. That's kind of what the podcast I host, Shoulder to Shoulder, is about. Sure, there's a script, there's questions you want to ask, but for the most part, it's responding to what the person gives you. And that's frankly half of a halftime post-game interview anyway. You have 1 or 2 questions, but then you're just going to respond to what they say. And he's like, look, tonality of your voice, your charisma, attitude, perfect. Like, we'd love to have you come out and do this. And I said, sure, fantastic. Started doing some prep on players and learning a little bit about the league. But basically, I was just going to ask you, Coach, how did the first half go? Yeah. And then I would respond to whatever Coach was going to say. So, I felt very little pressure about the whole thing. I was really excited, thought it was going to be a blast. About 3 days before the first broadcast. Go ahead.
It was going to be a what? What did you say there?
It was going to be a blast.
Oh,
Oh,
boy.
gosh, I know.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
All right, carry on. Sorry. We'll let it pass this one
look,
time.
the Boom Booms, as I affectionately refer to them. Blast might have been a great name for Missile, but a rebrand could be in order for those guys now that it's MASL. We'll just throw that out there.
There you go.
I'm just kidding. So 3 days before our first broadcast in the bubble, the person who was going to do play-by-play for the Fury backed out. So Philly gets moved to play-by-play, and I get a phone call that says, hey, guess what? Instead of 2 to 3 minutes of questions, we now need you to be the color commentator for the entire broadcast.
For 3 hours.
Are you ready?
Ready and go.
Go. And so me being the kind of person that, like Philly, look, I grew up with, Chicken Stew. I grew up with Vin Scully. Like, I idolized sports broadcasters as a kid. And when someone says, hey, look, here on a silver platter is the opportunity to be a sports broadcaster, I said, sure, I can do this. Hit the books, didn't really have much time to prep at all. And of course, not only did I get to call one game, but I believe we called 5 games on 5 consecutive nights as we were broadcasting for every team within that bubble.
Yep.
So not only did I had to prepare for one home and away team, I had to prepare for 4 teams. I had no idea what the rules were in indoor soccer, nothing, right? I will wholeheartedly admit now, the first time I ever watched a complete game live was when I was broadcasting it.
That's kind of awesome.
I had watched a lot of recorded games prior to that, but I had never seen a game live. And I think those first broadcasts kind of reflected the fact that we were a little bit in over our heads and out of our element for sure. But trial by fire, I think, look, every broadcast we'd get home, we'd listen to it. We'd be like, oh my gosh, all right, we got to fix this. And just trying to get better and better and better each game. And by the time we did that 5th broadcast, I felt like we had really improved a lot from day one, reaching out to, people like Bergrud and Vassos who have been so supportive and so helpful and offering us tips, Craig Elston down in San Diego as well, too, that have really taken us in and tried to help us improve our game. And obviously the fans, they will let you know as well, too. They are certainly not shy in sharing their opinion. And obviously you 3 as well, too, have been super helpful in supporting us and helping us improve. And so we kind of got through that first bubble of games, really figured out this is a heck of a lot harder than we thought it was going to be. I think sitting on my couch, drinking a beer, I was like, I could do that. Then you put the headset on, you get the camera in front of you, you got production talking in one ear, you got stats guy in the other ear, you've got chaos going on all around you. Our first broadcast, we lost power to the booth about 30 minutes before we go live. We had to completely reset and restart everything. I had all of my notes and everything prepared on my laptop, and there was no internet in the booth for me to have any of the pages that I had saved and opened and highlighted and everything done ready to go. So I lost all my notes. We lost all power. We lost all communication with production team and our headset. And this is our first ever broadcast. And all of a sudden I got no notes. I've got no one in my ear telling me what's going on. And it was, I'll admit it, it was a train wreck, that first broadcast. But you live and you learn. That's part of showbiz, and we just kind of keep plugging at it, trying to do the research, do the homework, prepare, and get ready for each game, and then just have fun. I think one thing we really noticed when we watched a lot of MASL games is, you'd be like, pass out to the top of the key, there's a shot, and goal.
Yeah.
Game is now tied, and we're in the 4th quarter. And Philly and I were like, dude, this is not us, We're big, animated, intense people. So we're like, look, we're going to do this, but we're going to do it our way. This is not going to be a dry show. This is going to be animated. And Philly needs no help with that whatsoever. He is a larger than life person as it is. For me, it's just, and I'm a loud person too, but I mean, just keeping up with his volume and his level of intensity is a workout and a half throughout a broadcast. And we're having so much fun with this. It's been such an amazing journey. And, hopefully the fans are really digging the progression we've had and the direction we're going. And we're going to keep onward and upward.
Awesome. Yeah, we the first broadcast, and I'll admit we were one of the fans that like, what is this? Like, I wasn't fans of the previous guys, and we won't name them by name or call them out or anything, but I thought that they were not exciting and not good. But it was like Philly's energy was like here, and yours was like here. But then by game 5, like you said, it was,
Yep.
and we'd started chatting and stuff, and I was like, who is this Philly guy? And then I listened to the first episode of Striking Fury. I'm like, oh, that's who he is. He's the same person. It's like not a persona. Like we mentioned Joey Zanaboni in St. Louis a couple of times. He actually admitted he has, oh, well, that's the paid persona. That guy you have to pay for. Otherwise, I'm just this normal person, but you pay for the guy who's on the broadcast. I noticed the Philly was like, that's him. That's just who Philly is.
That's 100% Philly.
Yeah.
In the words of Hunter S. Thompson, one of God's own prototypes, too crazy and messed up for mass production, right? That's Philly. God bless him. He's an amazing and wonderful person, but there's only one of him out there. And that is him 24/7, 7 o'clock in the morning, 1 o'clock in the morning. That's Philly. He never turns it off. I have no idea how he hasn't died from exhaustion at this point, but that is just his personality. He is always on.
Yeah. No, and yeah, I mean, you guys, and we've chatted a lot, and I've given feedback and things like that, but you guys, you've gone from the arguably the worst in the first game to one of the best now over the course of that season, and then the beginning of this season. It's been great. It's been great to watch, and it's been great to watch the growth and knowing, especially, talking to you outside of the broadcast, things that you're going through. And like, I knew about the, losing power and everything. It's like, well, how do you not just like lose your mind there? Like panic. I mean, you say, guys sit on the couch and go, I can do that. And that's not me. I know Matt says that, but like me, I'm still baffled on how you figure out what the numbers of the players are when you can't see their numbers and they're running down the field. How do you know who that guy is? And especially when I'm looking in an arena, I know it's different because you're way up there. I don't know if you guys use binoculars or if you're at a different angle, but on TV, half the time I can't tell who has the ball until, especially for an opposing team, until it's well into like second or third quarter. Guys on the wave, I can usually tell, but it's the opposing players. And so hats off definitely to you guys for what you're doing. And
well, I'm not wearing one.
So it's a lot of social media stalking of people in order to figure out what they look like. So if we have a broadcast that goes live at 7 p.m., Philly and I arrive at the stadium around 1 or 2 p.m.
Oh, wow.
We don't need to be there that early, but we get there that early to make sure we greet every single player home and away as they show up. Justin Stinson changes his hair color. We need to know so we can see it on a broadcast. Especially teams that we knew very little about, like Chihuahua Savage. That was a really challenging broadcast because it was very hard to find information on these players. The teams don't want to overplay their hand and give you too much information. You don't know who's coming across the border. They have a roster of like 29 guys. So you're like, I don't even know who's going to suit up that day. We don't know what numbers people are wearing, the numbers they give you to study. You could memorize those numbers all you want. Well, guess what? Game day, we're going to swap 10 numbers around. And then you spend all this time making flashcards, memorizing people's numbers. And, oh, too bad. So a lot of it is simply the day of. You have to do your homework ahead of time. You have to be prepared. And then game day, you come in, you watch every single player enter the locker room. You watch every single player enter the turf when they come out and get called, and you say, okay, what are the distinguishing characteristics for this person? How can I pick them out on a line change and I can spot who's coming in and going out? And it's hard. I think, calling an 11 and a side soccer match would be so much easier than doing indoor with the line changes and people constantly coming on and off. And, sixth attacker comes out and you can't see the number on the kit because they got the pink thing over it. Right. And, and so you really have to start paying attention to like little subtle details. And that only happens if you're there to greet those players when they enter. If you're in the booth 5 hours before the game, making sure you've updated all your notes to have all the right information, double check in with their PR people as they enter the stadium, double checking with your stats guy. Do I have this right? Do I have this number right? going down and talking to the coaches, who's going to play today, who's not going to play today. Do you have any number changes for me? Like, why is so-and-so not suited up today? It requires a lot of preparation. For that little 2 hours of broadcast probably takes 20 to 30 hours of notes and research and creating your game boards. Like, some of these game boards that we create in order to call our broadcast. So this is the paperwork that's in front of us while we're calling a game, and so I have software on my computer that lets me use label makers in order to create a label for each player, and then sticking those labels on depending on who's starting and who's not starting that day, and checking my notes against Philly's. And we do our research independent on purpose so that hopefully he finds something I don't and vice versa. So then, 2-3 hours before game, we compare all our notes and, oh gosh, that's a really cool tidbit about this. And, how do you pronounce this again? And what is it? Slavishno Ubiperopovic? Okay, how am I going to say this live on a broadcast? Boschivansky, is that right? Some of that stuff, and learning these nicknames, and with a lot of these guys, especially for Chihuahua Savage, you gotta know your Spanish. For a lot of players across this league, you gotta know how to pronounce Portuguese, and you gotta be Googling how do you pronounce a name, and worst case scenario, message the PR director or literally walk down to the locker room. And before every game, there's usually one player that we go down to the locker room and we're asking them. And then you still get Leite's name wrong, right? So, you get a media guide from the team that says Leite, right? And you're like, okay, well, that's what the Soccers have given us. That's got to be what it is. And you still end up getting some of that stuff wrong. But, especially when it comes to the players who are here from a foreign country, we really, really study and try and pronounce these names right and get this stuff down so that, when these players' moms are watching, when their spouses are watching, and their family's sitting there, they're not sitting there going, man, why can't they pronounce my kid's name right? Or, other broadcasters throughout the league that are watching our games to do homework for their upcoming game. And frankly, we do the same when we watch their broadcasts, and I hear them say something and I go, dude, have I been pronouncing his name wrong this whole time? Or what's going, and then you have, examples like Marcio, which, I'm totally sorry we got his name wrong for like half a season. It's never ending work. But I tell you, man, once that game's over and you do your final send off, you're up here. I mean, the high from it is incredible. It is so much fun. Philly and I leave Toyota Arena after every game going, God, I wish I could do this every day for the rest of my life. It is so much fun. And it's totally worth the 20 hours of breaking down game film and calling people's mothers to find out how you pronounce their last name.
No, I thought you did the Savage game. I thought was great because you got into using the nicknames, and I thought it made it more, for me as a listener, it made it more personal. It's like, it's more, because you could tell you had a connection with them as opposed to just the guy going, Letty, Leia, and by the way, it's
Leite, Martio Leite. I think we figured it out now, but it took a couple podcasts and some investigative reporting on behalf of other people around the league to help us out there. Well, I will say the media guide his own team put out was where we were going off of originally, and so the fingers need to be pointed. No.
That's been the excuse that I've heard over the years of who was our favorite last year, Matt? Sam, you want to say it?
Guernsey.
Guernsey. I'm like, anyone from the Midwest who's had a glass of milk in their life knows how to pronounce Guernsey. Like it's, and California's a big dairy state too. Guernsey should be an easy name, but I've heard the answers of, well, the media guides, that's what's on the media guide. Well,
when you don't know, just because it's spelled a certain way, and you might think, oh gosh, I know someone with that last name, and so I know how it's pronounced. And then you meet somebody who pronounces it completely different than maybe even the way it's supposed to be pronounced, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes that's really hard because you might know 15 other people you've met in your life that have the same last name that pronounce it a certain way, but then you never know, like maybe this one person pronounces it differently. And so you kind of rely on those media guides put out by the teams, and you figure that they're going to have the inside track on how to do it. But as you can see, it's still a work in progress.
Yeah, funny story on that. About 4 or 5 years ago, Art Kramer of Milwaukee Wave fame admitted on the air that he was pronouncing Leite wrong all this time. And at one point, Marcia just said to him, "Hey, by the way, my name is Leite, not Leite." He's like, "Oh, I didn't even realize I've been saying it. Why didn't you say it sooner?" And Marcia's like, "I don't know." It just didn't come up. So I think the players care, but the players aren't going to, I think some of them are so humble, they aren't going to go out of their way to say, "Hey, you're not saying my name right."
And I think it really takes, I mean, in this case, it took all of us, from broadcasters, players, fans, to kind of come together and be like, all right, can we get him to just answer the question once and for all? How is it pronounced?
Yeah.
He set the record straight.
We do that with it. So speaking of which, do you prefer Jonathan or John or Johnny or any of the others?
You know, to be honest, most people in my personal life call me John, and most people in my professional life call me Jonathan. So I can usually kind of tell where I've met somebody. But fun story about that. So in 3rd grade, I changed schools. So I went to a new school. I show up to my first day and they're like, "What's your name?" And I said, "Oh, my name's John." And they're like, "Well, we already have a John." I'm like, "All right, well, call me Jonathan." And they're like, "Actually, there's already a Jonathan." And I was like, "Okay, call me Johnny." And they're like, "Well, there's actually already a Johnny. What's your middle name?" And I was like, "Well, my middle name's Bradley." And they're like, "There's already a Brad and already a Bradley in this class because of the unimaginative parents."
Sorry, you're going to have to switch schools now, apparently.
So my last name is Reimer, and there was no one else called Reimer. So in school, from 3rd grade to 12th grade, everyone, teachers, students, called me Reimer. And everyone just thought that was my name. Right. And when I graduated and they read my full name, Jonathan Bradley Reimer, people were like, "Who the heck is Jonathan?" Like, people didn't even know that was my name. But obviously, when you become an adult, you can't just have people call you Reimer, because then everyone thinks you're like trying to be some up and coming rap star, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, obviously not a hip hop artist. So I kind of went back to John and Jonathan. And I, amongst friends, people will just call me John. And in my professional world, you know, I sell wine for a living. I'm a sommelier. So a name like Jonathan Bradley is a person you believe is going to sell you good wine. But like John, maybe not so much.
Especially Johnny.
So the answer is, I really don't care. And then this year, Philly, of course, has dubbed me the Doctor, which is my new nickname. So now it's Philly and the Doctor, which is very confusing because no, I'm not a doctor. I'm actually one of the few people in my family without a PhD. So I'm sure the rest of my family is fairly frustrated by that.
Right.
You know, Craig Elston still calls me JR, and everyone's like, "Oh, why don't you just go by JR?" And in the MASL world, that would make perfect sense, except for Philly and JR is already defenders of the bank.
Sure.
So there's already a Philly and a JR in his life. So I can't be JR. So I really don't care. The Doctor's hilarious. I love that Philly's gone with it, and I'll roll with it. As you know, I don't think you should ever love or come up with your own nickname. You know, it's kind of got to be something given to you. And so the Doctor's what they're calling me, but Jonathan, don't care.
That's funny. Yeah. So growing up with the name of Adam, never really had an issue, except for there are 3 Adam G's that are Wave season ticket holders.
Well, Adam is arguably the least original and yet most original name, right? So
right, yeah. I suppose suppose that's a good way to look at it. And I can't blame anyone except for my parents. So thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah.
But yeah, every once in a while I run into a situation like at a work situation. I was on a team once where 3 Adams, and there were 2 in our location and 1 down in Ohio. And the project manager would just send an email going, "Hey, Adam, can you take care of this?" And figured, you know, between the 3 of them, they can figure it out, and one of them will get it done.
Yeah, somebody will get it done.
Yeah. Like, "Oh, not me." You know. But yeah, so let's talk about those 2 games against Florida, and what your thoughts are.
I have a feeling. I have a feeling that, I mean, look, I don't want to call anyone out for this, but I felt like those games had playoff vibes to it, right?
100%.
We're talking about 2 teams that are expected to be challenging for a title at the end of the season. Maybe not everyone's home team that they would root for, but you certainly have a Ron Newman Cup finalist in the Fury and a team stacked with talent. And at last I checked was still, leading the power rankings in the juice boxes up Florida Tropics. Right. So I was expecting them to be close games, physical games. And I was expecting the Fury to win the physical battle just based on size. You look at, the Tayu brothers, Cisse, Berto, they certainly pack a physical prowess. And in the first game, back and forth, we edged it out by 1 goal. The second game, I really thought it got significantly more physical. And I don't feel like the whistles really went the Fury's way. And sometimes, look, that's just a roll of the dice. And when you have really big players on your team, like certainly Frank is one of, it's a lot easier to go in with harder contact on him and get away with it because he's such a big guy. And in talking to Frank after the game, he's like, man, I haven't been hit like this in a game in a really long time. Those guys were above and beyond what he felt was acceptable, right? So from the man's words himself, he said, look, I was getting hack-a-shacked the whole game. And yet there wasn't really the cards or whistles. Now, they certainly got a lot of fouls blown against them, but it never really got elevated to blues. And so they kept doing it, and they ultimately ended up winning that physical battle. Now, with Frank, when you get physical with him, I don't really understand why teams do this because it seems to awaken a demon in him. And in that second game, he had a fourth quarter hat trick because he was ticked off. When Frank's ticked, he just puts balls in the back of the net. And so if I was a team, I would just, go out there and give him chocolates before the game. And, he would probably, coast through the whole game, no problem. So I didn't think that was the boldest strategy, but it really seemed to work for them. I think the Fury's big issue, especially in that second game, was pass completion. There were so many turnovers, and so many of their goals were a direct result of bad turnovers. Like, obviously, every possession change is a turnover of some extent, but passes through the midfield and defensive passes that were nowhere close to one of our own players, and those kinds of turnovers are the ones that really end up costing you. And when I stop and I think about really why were there so many poor passes going forward, I have to think a lot of it is simply the players acclimating to the new goalkeeping rule. So many times last year, when you don't have an outlet pass, you retreat and pass the ball to the keeper. And now that option is not available to you. And the Fury really don't like to just dump the ball down in a corner and then go fight for a ball in a corner, because that really plays into other teams' obvious game plan of playing physical against the Fury. You don't ever want to have a tactic that plays into your opponent's strategy. And certainly after game 1, it was obvious that was Florida's strategy, was to be physical. So I can see where Jimmy was trying to go with it, but the execution, unfortunately, just was not up to their level. On the first night, they did well enough to win the game. On the second night, a back-to-back game after traveling all the way across the country, they just didn't really have the legs and the stamina to keep up with it. So where I think things kind of fell apart in that second game was 2 very physical matches, back-to-back days, team having to travel, having to adjust to a new rule. And ultimately, we still had, I think the first game was 6-5 and the second game was 7-6, if memory serves correct. Yep. So two very playoff-esque games. 1 goal decides each game. Both teams were absolutely in it to the final whistle. I mean, as a fan, you can't really ask for much more than that. Right. And walking away from it, I think a lot of people thought the Fury were not as good a team as the Florida Tropics. And I think leaving that series, I'd be hard-pressed to say which is the better team right now, because it looked fairly even throughout the course of it. But, man, it was fun to watch.
Alec Marshke did put Ontario at the top of the leader of the power rankings after that, even though they lost the second game. So just because,
and I think we were ranked 6th or 7th or maybe even lower than that prior to those games.
I don't think it was ever that low. I think it was pretty high. But yeah, I think what I'm seeing with the goalkeeper rule still, and I think we're going to see this probably all season until the players really, really get a grasp on it, is one thing that Keith Tozer told us, or told me, I don't know if he told us on the show, I think he did, was that when they brought the rule into play in the test thing that they did, players were saying, well, I have to think about what I do now. And Tozer's like, well, yeah, I tell my 8-year-olds that. You shouldn't have to, you should, or they're like, I have to think about it before the ball gets to me. He's like, well, yeah, that's part of the game. You should know what you're doing with the ball before the ball is to you. And I think what's happening is a lot of the defenders get it, and they're so used to just like second nature. I can dump it back anywhere in this like 45-degree angle, and my goalkeeper is going to take care of it. I don't have to worry about it. And now they're like, oh crap, I can't do that now. Or wait, can I do it or can I not do it? I don't remember. Oh, I better be safe. I think you can actually watch that hesitation in a lot of players. You can see it, and it just is a little stutter step or a little bob of the head or whatever. But I think what's happening is that you're seeing that when they're getting more used to it, and they get more used to it after more games and more practices, I think we'll see that go away. And that's, if you've seen us talk about this rule ad nauseum, I've said, 3 years down the line, it's not going to be even an issue, but it's going to be the transition into that, getting used to it is where it's going to be really where the hesitation is going to come in. And of course, a team like Florida is going to jump on all those hesitations and all those missed passes, and we get defenders get stuck and give away the ball or whatever. I think we had one, from what I remember, there was one actual goalkeeper foul, and it was against Milwaukee. And I did look back, and that was a legitimate foul. But there was one it might have even been in Florida, where Sigic called a goalkeeper violation, and everyone was like, no, they touched it, and they went back and conferred, and they were like, nope, you're right. They did a drop ball instead. So at least the refs are getting it right.
Even the refs are having a hard time adjusting to it. To me, the most intriguing piece of this is the tactics. In breaking down game footage and watching games around the league, you see a common trend. So many teams are just dumping the ball as far as they can when they don't have the outlet pass. A lot of teams are running a midfielder diagonally or running their second defender diagonally in order to try and create some separation, and then, playing the through ball out in front of them. And a lot of them are just immediately dumping the ball off to defender one, seeing if that defender can find, the quick outlet pass, the quick one-touch pass, or figure something out. And then the ball comes back to the keeper and you use it immediately. So you don't have to worry about thinking, can it go back? Can it not go back?
Right.
And then once the keeper uses the one touch and the pass isn't there, then boom, you get the ball dumped down to the end. It's contested. The other team's going to touch it. And so boom, slate's cleared. So like those three things have been the most common trends for me. The diagonal runner, the immediate pass to the defender off to the side, or the long ball down to the corner. And it seems like those three ideas are the only ideas that are really prevalent right now as far as how to respond to this when you get stuck and you're encountering a press. And so that's been kind of just, a little intrigue, a little fascination as to how that plays out. But how is that chess match going to adapt, right? Now that we've seen, XYZ teams are the ones that are going to dump it long. These are the teams that are going to play right to the defender and attempt to play out from the back. These are the teams that are going to go straight to the midfield and then, have the defenders try and clean it up. So then when the chessboard turns around and we see these teams again for a second time, and this is something the Fury are going to have to deal with because our next 3 matches are all against the Soccers, each one a week apart. So it's not like a back-to-back overnight where you got one night to break down film, quick adjust, react like we had with the juice boxes. When we go down and play the Gym Sox, we got a week in between each one of these. So we're going to have to kind of play the game, have a week to break it down, think about it, play the game, have a week to break it down before we finally play the third game. So there's 3 games in 3 weeks. That to me is just going to be how does Salvaggio and Nordberg go back and forth with each response, counter response. And that's honestly the part of this new goalkeeper rule that kind of intrigues me the most is the chess match side of it with regards to the tactics. But I think it's fun. It's a high scoring move. It's a futsal move. Keeps the ball going forward. Keeps the line changes a lot quicker. I feel like the game is always going now. And not that indoor soccer really needed more action, but even those dead times where it's back and forth from keeper to defender, that's no one's favorite part of a game.
Sure. Yeah.
And now it's all gas, all forward. And if we're trying to push this product and raise that bar, the 20, 30% we want to raise it, I can see where the idea is initially paying benefit. And I personally don't really have an issue with the rule. It's the adjustments that I find captivating.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. And so it's kind of a neat transition. We're talking about the goalkeeper rule, and you've got 2 great goalies down there in Ontario. And we saw Chris Toth last year in Tacoma. And we saw Clayson DeLima pretty much all of last season as Ontario's main keeper. What's it like having both of those guys in Ontario?
In the words of Jimmy Nordberg, Clayson DeLima is the goalkeeper of the future, but he needs help learning the subtleties, the fine art, the mental side of the game. Everything physically you could ask for from a goalkeeper, Clayson DeLima is. There's a reason he was goalkeeper of the year last year. His ability to respond to a shot, his ability to, block a shot up, down, left, right, doesn't matter. Fantastic. But his passing, his play with his feet, his anticipation of where to put the ball when he's offensive minded, and just some of those intellectual moments are really where the coach felt he needed some development. And we saw this in our preseason game. Speaking of the new goalkeeper rule, the ball was played back to DeLima after he had already touched it. Had he advanced across center line, he could have touched the ball. However, he didn't make it to the center line in time. And then he let the ball roll all the way back into his own box before he touched it, thinking that someone might come back or that it didn't matter when he touched it. It was going to be, a restart top of the arc. He didn't realize that if he'd have touched it immediately as the ball crossed the center, that it's going to be from the spot of the foul. Now, it's only if it's inside the box, giggity, that he has the ability to get that top of the arc reshot. So, you can see that, again, that mental issue sort of reared its head within that first preseason game as well, too. He's young. The guy's 23 years old. That's in keeper years infantile, right? So he's got a long, long career ahead of him. And who better could you possibly put to have him learn under than Chris Toth? I mean, he's the best in the league. Getting to see Zoltan at the games is really cool as well, too. This last game, Philly and I are going down the elevator. The elevator opens and boom, there he was. And I was like, oh, Zoltan, just having him around the club, and he's going to be able to work with Clayson and offer his expertise and advice as well, too. So having both Toths there, plus, Chuy Molina, who was our backup keeper last year, is now our goalkeeper coach as well, too. He's 44, 45 years old, was a former keeper of the year himself. These are people with a lot of experience and ability to help Clayson take over eventually. But this team wants to win now. #championship bound. They put that moniker on the team at the beginning of the season that it's championship or bust. And even having the reigning goalkeeper of the year wasn't enough for ownership or for Jimmy. They wanted to make sure that, Clayson continues to get better. And so Toth is there to be the best and help make Clayson better.
Nice. Yeah, I'm obviously impressed. I don't mean this to do a rub salt in the wound kind of thing, but I think if he doesn't fall on his head last season, you guys won the championship.
Yeah.
Having him
Believe me, we've had that conversation.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, with the new goalkeeper rule, that never would have happened.
Right.
Or if a handball outside of the box would have been called last year, we might be champions as well, too, but I'm not bitter.
We've certainly never had a handball fiasco tournament championship, and ask any of the fans in Sonora and they'll definitely not agree with you on that.
Across the world of soccer, right?
Yeah, right,
the hand of God, Diego Maradona, right? I mean, it's not something exclusive to our league, and controversy is part of the fun. I don't think there's ever been any game ever played in any soccer anywhere in the world in which one fan didn't disagree with a call, and that's part of the fun.
Are you a F1 fan by chance?
No, sir.
Okay, well, then we won't even go into that, but that was ridiculous. Anyway, so we had this fun story last season about a certain soccer ball, and you mentioned, hey, I gotta tell you the behind the scenes. Now I'm putting you on the spot here. We haven't prepped this at all. How much of that can you tell on the show here, and how much of that needs to stay secret?
I'm happy to talk about it.
Yes.
If I get in trouble later for it, so be it. But
well,
I'm an ask forgiveness, not permission kind of person.
There you go. There you
go. So obviously, look, we're talking about slippery balls. I can't walk
slippery
into
balls.
I can't walk into an MASL arena or meet any fans at any point in time without someone going, slippery balls, right? So I'm well aware that
it is your fault.
Oh, yeah. I have no one to blame but myself for this. So first of all, let's frame this by saying I think this was Philly and I's like fourth or fifth broadcast. I mean, it was not very far into our career in which this moment happened. And a more tenured, a more respectable broadcast team. Shouts to, Erik and Nick. Erik did, fantastic job at the beginning of the show here, picking up for him. But a lot of broadcasters wouldn't have touched this at all. But if I paint the whole story for you, maybe you'll understand why we found this particular moment so hilarious, right?
Third game, I think.
Third game. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's Fury Soccer's. It's in between the first and second quarter. And we see the Soccer's head trainer go marching as soon as the whistle goes and we go to commercial. And he goes charging across over to the officiator's table. And he's holding two of the balls in front of him as he's walking over. And it's an empty stadium. When someone's yelling, you can hear everything echoing through the stadium. So even though he's on the far side of the turf from us, we could still hear what he's yelling back and forth across the stadium, right? And so of what we could make out of that conversation, their trainer is holding two game balls in front of him, screaming at the top of his lungs, "You need to rub these slippery balls," over and over, echoing through the stadium. Now, to someone, they might have just passed that off as the normal banter one sees. And for anyone who sat close enough to one of these games to know, there's some colorful conversations that take place on the field. And this is a, PG compared to some of the stuff that is said between players and coaches in the heat of the moment. But a grown man screaming in an empty arena at the top of his lungs, "You need to rub these slippery balls," over and over again. I mean, look, Philly and I thought it was the funniest thing we had probably ever seen at a sporting event ever. So the second quarter comes around and we're just like, okay, we can't, we don't know what's really going on down there. And so I think we briefly mentioned in the second quarter that there was a spirited conversation, right. And that we were going to try and figure out more about what was happening. So obviously there's only 10 people in the stands. We know 8 of them. So we reached out to a couple people who were right behind the officials table. And we were like, dude, what the heck was that all about? Yeah. And my friend down there was like, "Oh man, you are never going to believe it. This guy screaming about slippery balls at the top of his lungs is the funniest thing I've ever heard." And so we're like, okay, what were they asking for? And he's like, he was saying that, the balls weren't safe to play with because they were too slippery and that, the officials are in charge of rubbing the balls down. And, this guy was screaming at the officials to make sure that they rub the balls. When you take the ball out of the packaging and inflate it, right, which every game gets, brand new game balls, there's this coating on the outside that you have to take a towel and remove the coating before the ball is supposed to be used in gameplay. So this is part of the instructions that apparently were given to the refs before the game so that when a player puts his foot on top of the ball doesn't squirt out from under it. And this can not only affect gameplay, but could be a really serious injury hazard for players. And the Soccers had apparently gone through an injury similar to this. Frank had gone through an injury similar to this where their foot was on top of the ball and it rolled out from under them and it caused a knee injury. So I understand that this was in the name of player safety, and I believe we mentioned that in our sophomoric moment about it. But nonetheless, we felt that the story needed to be told. Maybe that wasn't the greatest decision in that moment, but then, of course, we launched into the famous soundbite coming out of the halftime. And, we talked to Danny Waltman and we were like, "Danny, look, you played with these balls last night. Did you think they were too slippery?" And he's like, "Dude, I have no idea, man. I just saw a grown man scream rub these slippery balls at the top of his lungs in an empty arena." Because, you could see everyone over there cracking up, right, while this was happening, right? And there's all these people laughing, and we're like, this will be fun to talk about. So let's talk about rubbing slippery balls, right? And that's Philly and I's wheelhouse humor right there.
Well, it was so great because you were so deadpan at it. because I think part of it was that you were trying to not make yourself laugh, because you could kind of tell that, because that's what I wouldn't be able to say that anywhere near, because you kind of
that was the best part.
you drew it out to, like, bring on the mysterious and to bring on the tension and everything, and then part of it, I think, was just it was so early in your broadcasting life that you were still trying to just get used to it. But it was the funniest thing I'd ever heard. And I don't know if you know the story behind In the Box, but In the Box is essentially created as the Facebook group and the show was essentially created because of the corn dog moment, which was called sophomoric humor and had no place in the game. Yep, I see him back there. Is that a mask on him too?
Yes, my corn dog is COVID appropriate.
There you go.
He has a Fury beanie and his mask on.
And yeah, and because that whole thing happened that way, we embraced the crazy sophomore humor. I mean, I say, I still feel in my mind, part of me feels like I'm still in my 20s. My sense of humor suggests that I'm like 12 and my body's wondering how I'm still alive. It's just, that's the way I go through life. And it's much more enjoyable that way than, and I know the whole slippery balls thing would have never worked out on that other forum that we used to be part of, but I'm so glad it happened. I'm so glad I was able to grab the
slippery balls
sound clip right there, and I may have one or two more based on the conversation we had tonight.
No, look, go for it. Have fun with it. It probably wasn't the smartest decision, and no one has ever come up to me, though. No one from the league, no one from the Fury, and ever questioned it, with the exception of. So let's finish the slippery ball story.
Okay.
Because we have the moment as it took place, and then our joking around about it, which frankly, I think had we ended the conversation 10 seconds earlier, we probably would have come across a little bit more professional about it. But I think we dragged it on just a hair too long, because he and I it was a hilarious moment that we had just experienced, and we wanted the fans to really get something funny out of this as well too. The fans aren't there in the stadium, and the fans that are there in the stadium would have experienced this. So we wanted to just sprinkle in those little moments that they're missing out by not being in the stadium. So that was the Fury's last game of the regular season. So we had our after season wrap party that night. So we went out with all of the players, all of the coaching staff, ownership. We had ownership of a couple other teams and some players from a couple other teams as well too. And so we were all having a good time that night. I think, I had a cigar with Jimmy and, potentially an adult beverage, maybe two, respectable amount. But by the time we Ubered back to our hotel room, all of the teams are staying in the same hotel room. So it's a hair after midnight, and Philly Panda and I show back up to the hotel, and who is waiting for me in the hotel lobby?
Oh boy.
None other than head athletic trainer for the San Diego Sockers. And so I walk into the lobby, and the first thing I hear is, "You slippery balls, get over here." And I'm like, oh no, right? So, it's late at night. A scotch or two may have been had, and I wasn't really ready for the dress down that I received. At which point I was, emphatically informed that the entire moment was all for player safety, and that I had made a joke at the expense of player safety, and this person was simply trying to do what was best for their players and best for the league and best for my own players as well too, and that I really needed to take a broader look at what was going on, and the player safety being the important part of all this, and that I shouldn't make light of these things, and that he was receiving quite a bit of grief over it. I think he soon realized that I was really in no condition to have a conversation about this in the moment. And he said, "You know what? I'll talk to you tomorrow. Go to sleep. You guys have clearly, been out. That's great. Go to sleep." And so I said, "Look, I'm sorry. We're really new at doing this. We thought it was a pretty funny moment. We just wanted to share that funny moment with the fans. I mean, that's what this is all about, right? It's just, and frankly, I feel that more people are aware about the texture of the game balls as a result of our conversation than may have been aware about it previously. So perhaps we helped raise awareness in some way." So Philly and I go off to sleep.
Right.
We get up.
I mean, you were. you mentioned player safety a couple of times during that whole thing, so you were about it.
We get up the next morning, we go to the hotel lobby, and who's waiting for me in the hotel lobby the next morning?
I still there from the night before.
Yeah.
And so we had a rehashed conversation in which I had a much more lucid response to, where, look, I was told that he was taking a lot of grief over the incident from players and other members of the organization. And, that I needed to be mindful of all the various things involved. And if we're really trying to elevate this league, is this the appropriate conversation to be having on our broadcasts? And, I thanked him for his kind input and would take those things to heart, apologized if we took it a little too far, and, so be it. So we go out, we do breakfast, we get ready, we start putting our notes together. We show up to the stadium, we enter the stadium, and who's the first person I run into the second I enter the stadium? Here he is again. And I'm just like, man, I cannot stop running into this guy. So he showed me in the locker room that his name had been replaced on the locker with slippery balls, had been written in its spot, and that he was taking a pretty prime razzing over everything that was going on. And I think he'd kind of gotten to a point of acceptance about it. So after Philly and I got dressed and finished our pregame walkthroughs and all that, we went downstairs and he took a picture with me holding the ball, which I put on social media, which a bunch of people saw. And he eventually ended up being a good sport about it, but it took a couple very heated conversations he had with me. So I had to own up to that moment 3 times within 24 hours immediately. And still to this day, the fans know me as, oh, wait, the slippery balls guy. Yeah. So that'll be my claim to fame for some time. I'm the slippery balls guy. And you know what? In retrospect, I don't regret it. It was hilarious. Oh, yeah. And c'est la vie.
And this, I mean, we when we started started in the box shows, we would have players come on and we kind of had, I wouldn't say a script, but we kind of had an idea of what we wanted to ask. And one of the questions was, what's like the craziest game or locker room moment or whatever? And Ian shared something with, Coach Tozer and his tighty whities yelling at somebody. And, it's just stuff, little things like that the fans don't even know happen. I mean, these things happen all the time because as people, we have all sorts of weird inside stories and inside jokes and things that happen. And, Matt and I used to do a bit where we spent the first 5 minutes of the show going, are we live? Live? I don't know. How do we tell? It's just maybe not 5 minutes, 30 seconds or so. And that was our little thing. And then every once in a while we'll say it and people will remember it and things like that. That's how the whole corn dog thing started. That was just a weird inside joke between Andrew Haynes and I. And then, of course, we as fans just blew it out of proportion and it became, a status symbol of sorts. But I think that's great. And I think if you don't have self-awareness to know what you're yelling in an empty stadium that's going to be echoing around, you kind of have that coming to you.
And look, I do want to say the folks at Flight, they really, really try to design a ball that is perfect for the indoor game. Hats off to them to take that time and attention to pay to this game. I don't know if you guys have seen the new game balls.
Oh, you have one. Oh, the corn dog takes a dive.
So the new game ball for this season is actually textured. And if you look really close at it, it's got like this texturing pattern that's on the ball that gives it a little bit more grip. And if you look at last year's, it doesn't have that same texture. So say what they want.
Yeah.
Our slippery balls comment may have actually changed the design of this year's ball, which is, they're ever trying to improve and create something that's perfect for the indoor game. And I applaud them for constantly taking a look each year and trying to improve and challenge everything and challenge what they're doing to try and be better. I really appreciate their support for the indoor game. And I'm sorry if my comments last year were, defacing them in any way. That really wasn't the point. Look, it's the Sockers ultimately who create the game ball and put it out every year. So, when their own organization was frustrated that the protocols hadn't been followed to ensure that player safety was met, I respect their frustration. And in no way did I ever mean to, put down Flight or put down the soccer's organization or any of the people involved with it. We just heard something happen that was really funny. And so, I mean,
yeah. Well, I bet you Brian Farber was at that game. And he probably took that note back to Flight. And
he has declined my Facebook friend request numerous times. So perhaps, no, I'm just kidding.
So he said, last year was a thermally molded star panel ball that simply was not durable enough. The new ball has more grip for soul and skill, as well as a 32 panel hand sewn design to make it more durable. It also has a small amount of bounce reduction to keep the ball from bouncing like crazy. Because I asked him about it, because it was never, other than the picture of the Jazz Cup, because you're a 90s kid, the Jazz Cup I'm talking about. Other than the picture of that, we hadn't heard anything about it. So I was like, well, is this thing just a new design? Because the stars are obviously not there anymore. Are they going to do a new design every year? Is this, what's the deal with this? And it wasn't until 3 or 4 games in that the broadcaster was starting to actually mention it. First couple of games, there was no mention of the ball at all. It's like, well, what is this new white ball? And we'd seen pictures of it that leaked from players and things like that. But that was the first, hey, tell me what is different about the old ball versus the new ball. And in more than, fewer words, it's less slippery.
Yeah, it absolutely is. They've texturized it. There's plenty of jokes to be had there as well, too.
Right.
So many of the other broadcasts really kind of dove into the new game ball that by the time it got around to Philly and I's broadcast, right? Because we were like 2 weeks behind in starting our season based on arena availability and a number of other things from other teams, that by the time we had our first broadcast, we're like, well, look, we really don't want people to think that we're harping on this issue too much. Like, we don't want people to think like this is our one trick and we're just going to keep at it. Like, it was funny in the moment, let it go. And so, we mentioned it briefly. We have some reads that, we put in, because obviously, we love Flight and their support of the game and all that as well, too. So we don't want to, make it seem like we're anti in any of that. But obviously some changes were made, and obviously, the texture change to the ball as a result of its slipperiness last year was something that changed. And, we were very fortunate that most of the rest of our fellow broadcasters had already tackled that subject a lot more tactfully than we did by the time it got around to us. So, we didn't really feel the need to go over it too much on our broadcast. We did mention it, I think, in our first game halftime that we did. We kind of talked briefly about the new ball and, onward and upward. Let's keep improving the game. And to anyone who took offense to that portion of our broadcast last year, I'm sorry. I agree. It might have gone on a little longer than it should have. But if you were there in an empty stadium watching a man hold 2 balls in front of him, screaming at the top of his lungs, "You need to rub these slippery balls," you might have had a little different feeling in the moment than. So
I think it's safe to say.
I got to admit, I could hear in the back of my mind Danny Waltman saying
exactly
the same exact thing. Like, that dude just said, rubbing slippery balls
with the same voice. Yeah, with the Danny Waltman voice. Yeah,
with the Danny Waltman. Yeah.
I think I don't think you have to worry on this show. I think anyone who's made it this far into any one of our shows knows what they're in for, and that this is probably tame considered to some of the stuff.
Well, JP has not hit up my phone yet, so I think I'm pretty good. I did get a shout out from Jerry Jimenez, who says Farber hates you, slippery ball doctor. So there you go. My friendship with Brian may have sailed. I have nothing but respect for the man, and my condolences if anything I said caused you, any grief.
No, I think what your comments were made in the name of player safety and sharing a funny story.
Yep.
Yeah,
and that's really it. I mean, it's that's what happens. Hey, do you wanna pick some games with us before you go?
Yeah, far away. I'd love to.
All right. So, Matt, are we doing a show next Thursday?
Okay, if you want.
The New Year's Eve, considering this is Christmas Eve.
Yeah, I'm in.
So on New Year's Eve, there is a game that I want to go over first. So if we do a show next Thursday, we don't have to pick the games for next weekend. Because we can pick those next Thursday. That sound about
whatever
right?
You want to do. I'm in for, we can do a show.
There's a St. Louis at Dallas game at 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. Eastern next week. Do we want to watch that or do we want to do a show?
Yeah, let's do a show.
Okay, then we only have to pick 2 games.
Yeah.
So the first game is St. Louis at Dallas. John, why don't we start out with you?
Shrubs versus no logo, so I'm going Shrubs.
The no logo, just the state of
Oh,
Texas.
So Dallas last year was the Dos Logos because they literally had on their field 2 overlapping logos you could see at the same time. And so this year they just painted a giant white circle over both of them. So I've changed from calling them the Dos Logos to the no logos. So the Dallas Sidekicks are the no logos. And then I ambush San Luis Shrubs. So I'm going to pick Shrubs in this case.
So the funny thing on the Dallas is that's a brand new turf. So the first week they had their game, they painted a white circle on it with no logo. And then the second week, they painted a logo on it, but it's so faint you can almost barely tell. It almost looks exactly like last season's logo. But it is brand new turf, brand new paint, brand new logo. So I like your name. I like your name for it.
I have little terms of endearment names for every team, and and no disrespect, again, just having fun.
Oh yeah, no. I noticed the juice boxes and the gym socks. That was a good one. The gym socks. I got a giggle out of that.
My favorite is Taco Masters.
Oh yeah, well yeah.
The
I mean
Taco
that's
Masters.
not only the
that's
most
just a given.
not only the most obvious one, but the best one probably.
That's the best one.
I got St. Louis too. I don't think there's. I think Dallas is. We didn't really talk about what happened at Dallas, but
I'm going upset.
Dallas fired Pablo after 3 games for philosophical reasons. We here at In the Box wonder if those reasons were that Pablo wanted to win and Dallas didn't. Ricardinho has been hired as the interim coach. He's been with the team for a long time. And then today they hired or signed, or yesterday, or however you want to look at it, Cameron Brown, which they made a giant post saying, oh, we're going to have a secret signing, and they had a guy with his arms crossed blurred out. But then on the MSL side, they already had the transaction listed, so it didn't really help their case any. So then today,
best laid plans of mice and men. I really feel sorry for Dallas. This Western Division is so stacked, right? I mean, Tacoma might be older, but they still got some great talent. San Diego is obviously the reigning champs. The Fury, great team. Chihuahua, no one knew what they were bringing, but they just destroyed M2. So looking at Dallas, they were kind of the odd ones out to begin with.
Yeah. Well, now they're actually in the Central, but it doesn't get any better for them.
Right.
Because they're geographically are closer to Chihuahua. They're going to play a bunch of games against Chihuahua, and I don't think. I got St. Louis. Matt, what do you?
I think Dallas has to win a game this year. Like they're not going to go over. So I'm gonna take Dallas. I think if they play just like they did against Kansas City, I think they have a chance. So I'll take Dallas.
I updated the text behind under your picture.
Oh, my Geo?
Geo.
I can't even see it. Does it say Geo?
Oh, okay. All right. I did make it smaller because it was harder to position, and I figured just make it smaller, get it out of the way, and nobody cares. All right, you're going to pick...
Hannah cared, by the way, for the record.
What do you say?
I said Hannah cared. She wanted to know. She can't see her name, so she's like, is my name there? And I'm like, I don't know. I can't see it. So.
Everyone knows who we are.
Yeah.
But yeah, Gio's in the chat. Gio, do you pick Dallas? And then the game of the week, well, the game of the first half of the week is going to be Wednesday night, Milwaukee visiting Kansas City. John, what are the nicknames for these two?
So the Frozen Wave is, I mean, let's be honest. Growing up in Southern California, my high school is, state surfing champions like 60, 70 times over. I know what real waves look like, and those are not real waves when they're made of ice. So definitely the Frozen Waves, and then the Missouri Meteors. Got to be the Missouri Meteors.
There you
go. And I'm gonna go ahead and pick the Meteors just for my friends Erik and Nick.
Yeah, there are people who actually will surf in December and January in the Milwaukee area, which is insane because that's. But you're right. It's not an ocean. It's a giant lake, and they're just the waves. The waves get crazy, but not as consistently. But
Yeah. Come to San Clemente when we've got double overhead with some Mexicans, south swells coming up, and then talk to me.
sure.
I was body surfing that as a kid, and whatever's going on there in Milwaukee it's not the real deal.
There you go. All right, Matt. I'm gonna let you go first because reasons.
I'm agreeing. I'm going to take Kansas City. Yeah, Milwaukee. I don't know. The second half collapse. I'm too used to that, seeing second half collapses this season. So hopefully Milwaukee can turn it around. But they're going up against Kansas City.
So I did pick against the Wave for the first game, and I was right. And I was right it being a 1-goal game. I'm gonna be the homer, and I'm gonna pick Milwaukee for.
There you go. Good
And
job.
I think there's a lot of I don't want to say anger, but I want to say frustration based on the cancellation of the home opener. I think there's some frustration in the way the St. Louis game went. I don't think they were planning on that. I think they're going to work extra hard over these last essentially extra week in there, and I think Ian Bennett is going to have a giant game. I think Alex Bradley is going to have a giant game. I think goalkeeper is going to take care of it, whoever it happens to be, if it's Matt Perella. And we have Huffman back, and the other Adam G says Huff is the MVP of the game. If we get Hayne back, it's even that much more powerful. If we get Kevin Narandro back, even that much more powerful. I think the boys are going to step it up. I think it will be a crazy game.
IB could put a team on his back and go out and win a game, and I wouldn't ever rule the Cheese Curds out. They always have a chance.
There you go. So we're going to do a show Thursday night, but since we're why don't we pick the 2 New Year's Eve games? So again, it's the same teams flopped arenas. So since we're on Milwaukee and Kansas City at Milwaukee, typically the highest attendance game of the year for Milwaukee. And it's a tradition going back, 20, whatever it is.
Yeah, I'll take Milwaukee.
I will take Milwaukee too.
I think whoever wins the first game is losing the second game, or vice versa, whichever way it plays out. I think it'll be a split. That's just what we've seen a lot of so far in this league. When teams have a back-to-back, one team thinks the game plan works and sticks to it. The other team adjusts to it. And I think the counter-adjust is a lot easier to make the adjustment when you're the losing team, and that'll put you over the edge. I think they're both going to be really close games. I think both teams are really good. I think, again, this is another one of those Ron Newman Cup playoff-like matches, and I could see it going either way. And I think whichever team suffers the loss is going to be more motivated and dig that film a little deeper for the next leg.
Nice. And then the last game is Dallas at St. Louis.
St. Louis.
Yep. So
I mean, until Dallas shows me that they're ready to win games, it's really hard to pick them. And no disrespect to any of their players or anyone involved in the team. It just, as long as I've been watching this sport, which albeit is nothing, but I just haven't seen a whole lot from them to lead me to believe that they have what's in them to go out and win week in, week out. Sure, they're going to have their games. And frankly, I think their very first match in their very first game of the season, they had like a really great first quarter. And I thought, this is a new team this year. But I just haven't seen enough from them to pick them yet. And, I hope they get more competitive and make those steps to get there. But I just haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was the same reason why I picked Florida both games, because until they can show that they can lose, you got to just keep picking them. And they showed that they can lose.
Didn't I have Ontario sweeping that?
What's that?
Didn't I have Ontario sweeping?
I think we all did. I don't remember. That's why we don't keep track of these, so we don't have to look back and see how wrong we were.
That is true.
There is one other game I forgot about. This Sunday, the Columbus Rapids against the Memphis Americans in the NISL for the inaugural game for both teams and the league. I know nothing about either team except for Corey Adamson is the coach. I think he's playing for the Memphis Americans. And the Memphis has a really cool looking turf and arena. That's all I know. And corn dogs.
Well, if they have corn dogs, how could we pick against them?
Right.
I'm gonna pick against them because Columbus has FC in their name, and I'm gonna stick with my FC brethren.
Columbus also does have a wave in their logo.
Coincidence? I don't know.
I don't have the picker wheel set up easily.
Oh well.
I'm not going to root against America, so I'll go for the Patriots.
I'm gonna go for Memphis. And who knows how much we're gonna actually talk about this league this season. I'd like to say the broadcast is on YouTube. There's a link out to it. The hopefully someone from the NISL, if they happen to be watching this at some point, will post the link in the box. Otherwise, I'll try to see if I can find it. But it is nislpro.com is their website, and you can find them on Facebook. Memphis Americans are very active on Facebook, a lot of followers, and they should have that link posted for free. Yeah. So that is it. That is it for all of our games this week.
I have to be honest. We've been. Oh, so go ahead.
Yeah,
I was just saying. Unfortunately, there was going to be another game on Sunday, but we'll wait a couple months for that one.
I think, I've been trying so hard to get ready for this Savage game with Chihuahua being a team that we knew very little about, that I haven't really paid much attention at all to what's going on outside of MASL within the indoor world. Just trying to stay on top of all the notes that we need to have ready for a broadcast in this league alone. I really haven't checked in with what's going on in any of the other indoor world. So your guess is as good as mine.
Yeah, NISL was announced last year. It was going to be the plan was to be a 4-team league. We assumed it was going to be in the southeast type region, as the owner was in Florida. Memphis Americans was announced pretty early on, and then the last team was just announced a couple weeks ago. They're doing their unique thing is they're doing a women's game first and then a men's game second, and it's a doubleheader, and your ticket is for both games. And they're going to try to adjust the rules a little bit and the times and things to get everything done within like a 4.5 hour period. I think there's a half an hour break between games. Andrew Haynes, former owner of a number of teams, including most recently Florida and Ambush before then, is the kind of the owner of the league and co-owner of the teams. And good guy. He's actually the corn dog father. He invented the corn dog joke originally, and then we just beat it to death and made a thing out of it. So special place in all of our hearts for Andrew. And we were going to have him on the show right before the season started, and then time just got away, like it usually does. We weren't going to boot you for him. So, yeah.
Hey, I'm blessed that you all had me on today, and look, there are certainly many, 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 many better guests than me, but I appreciate you guys having me on.
No, you've been great. You've been great. One thing I do want to mention, there is a contest in the box right now for the best Joey Zamboni-esque line. Or you can make just a regular analogy, like a goal call or a save call or anything like that. I have not determined when it's going to end. I kind of originally said New Year's Eve, but we haven't really gotten a lot of we've gotten a lot of good submissions, but not a lot of voting on it. So to vote, click like or a reaction on any of the comments that are made. Matt Sterling has a bunch out there. I have one that I'm not considering as part of the contest. I saw Nick Episcopo was out there. I know Jay, I know Aaron has been out there. A bunch of Wave fans have put stuff out. Shelly said she loves it, so I think it's a good thing. It'll be a fun contest to do. Winner gets your choice of corn dog or 2 corn dogs in a basket dog toy thing with Velcro corn dogs. That
oh good, now we're gonna show it. Here we go.
they're Velcro, so they're detachable. I don't know how much these would hold up to a dog, because it seems to me any dog with teeth would tear this apart in mere seconds. But if you can see very closely here, there are both ketchup and mustard lines. Whereas the normal corn dog, which is taking a spill behind you, John, only has mustard on there.
Oh,
Corn
no.
dog down. See, that one only has mustard on it, which is automatically inferior to any other corn dog. But winner will get your choice.
I don't know.
The person with the most likes, person's comment with the most likes. You can multiple submissions. Matt Sterling has probably 5 or 6 on there already. But post away. I would say keep it family friendly to the point where it could show up on a broadcast. But you have one that's not family friendly. We have another group for that, and those who you know. So I think that pretty much does it. Matt, do you want to do anything more for this show, or I think we've?
No, I'm good. It's gonna be awesome meeting you in person, Jonathan, next month. That's gonna be awesome. Can't wait for that.
Fantastic. Every time I've had a chance to sit down with anyone from this league that I've met, Erik came out for an SKC game, and we got a chance to sit down and meet him. Everyone I've met throughout the MASL world are such wonderful people, and you guys have been so supportive of Philly and I and Panda. Thank you guys so much. I mean, not only just for doing this show and creating this amazing content and, involving the fans and galvanizing this entire fan base in a way that no one else is doing, but thank you for your help, your support, and soon friendship as well too. I can't wait to sit down and have an oat soda or two with you.
That's right.
We were going to try to go out there in 2020, but we bought a house and then COVID hit. And we were going to go out for the San Diego game, and it's more and more looking like we can't do it. My wife broke her foot and she had surgery, so we're in a tough spot where she probably won't be able to walk as much as we would need to really enjoy a vacation out there. So maybe the Wave meets Ontario in the playoffs. And we can maybe make our way from Milwaukee Airport to...
Welcome to Ontario International Airport.
And maybe
That's
just...
where I'm flying into.
Are you flying into...
Welcome to Ontario International Airport.
Yes.
I have to say, I think our commercial game has gotten better this year.
It's yes. I mean, there are more Capelli commercials. There are more last year, I think it kind of hit everyone by surprise with only 7 teams with only games of 4 arenas, I think it was, that all the commercials just blended together because it just felt like every week was the same commercials. And because the league kind of found it, formed together, and there were commercials for, like St. Louis commercials that everywhere. Lane Smith owns both Tacoma and part of the Comets, so there were those commercials are all in. But yeah, I think overall the commercials have been much better and more tolerable. And not to say they were bad commercials, but when you watch a commercial 80 times, it's just like, come on, just make it stop. So, but there is also this.
It's funny, obviously, because commercials are when the actual chaos is happening, when the camera goes dead and you're running to grab stats, you're running to try and use a restroom, you're running to try and get all this stuff together. So, we don't really get to see or experience any of that. I mean, the broadcast is happening on my monitor. Philly watches the turf. I watch the monitors, kind of how the play-by-play and the color have a little different responsibilities. So I actually get to see the commercials as they come up on the screen when we're not running to figure out who's changed a jersey number and, what was that call and what happened and try and pick up, the new stat sheet coming out for Bino, our statistician, and getting all this stuff together and, checking in with production and, getting ready for the next spot we got to do or something like that. It's pure chaos during commercial breaks. And the fact that we get back in our chairs, headsets on, and are ready to go coming out of commercials sometimes is a bit of a miracle. But so could be worse, I guess.
Some teams don't. We've had plenty of teams who come in, 3-4 minutes into the break. We've had in the past, we've had cameras that stay on the wrong angle for half the quarter and all sorts of fun stuff. Hey, since you mentioned that, just out of curiosity, how far behind? So are you watching the actual YouTube broadcast, or you get a feed from the arena?
So I get the actual broadcast feed, but before it goes out. So I'm getting the feed channeled off to me as it's going out to MASL Mothership. And then it goes from MASL Mothership to YouTube sometimes. To be honest, I really don't pay a lot of attention or have a ton of knowledge on the technical side of things. We have Mike Cepeda, who is our executive producer director that runs our broadcast. And there is no one harder working than that man. He is there 12 hours before each broadcast. You know, we have a professional hockey team and a professional basketball team that use the same arena. So every single bit of equipment that he uses has to be set up and broken down after and before every single game, which is an insane amount of work. And we know a lot of other people are using the stadium equipment. You know, you look at broadcasts like, you know, what Nick and Erik are dealing with, where, you know, all of that stuff is built into the stadium. All the teams there get to use it. It's a little different for us. Everything's got to be set up and broken down every time. So they basically have to troubleshoot any error that could arise when you're building a stadium for every single game. So the fact that the broadcast gets out with the quality that it gets out every game is, you know, him and sometimes just a 1 or 2 man crew that they're working with in order to make it happen. And he really, I mean, I've never seen anyone running around more to put out every little fire everywhere to make everything happen. So the fact that, you know, I mean, I get that feed for every single game. I mean, he's got to bring that monitor, set all that up himself, run all those wires from, you know, he's 2 booths down from us in the control center. And so all those wires got to get run down so that Philly and I have lighting. We have a camera. We have his mic, my monitor, you know, all the control boxes and all that kind of stuff that they have to do. Plus the remotes down to Panda, plus the remotes down to, you know, our PA announcers so that, you know, he can do stuff as well too. I mean, the fact that all that gets set up and torn down for every game still blows my mind. But
that is kind of crazy, yeah. So,
and yeah.
is your monitor in a real time to the game?
No,
or
it's
is
a
it
delay.
delayed? Oh, it is. Okay.
It's a delay. It's not very much. Like, it'll happen real time, and then if I look at the monitor, I can see it again.
Okay.
So sometimes as big things are happening, I'll look in real time and then I'll quickly look to the monitor, but then I have to wait for the replay really before I get any, especially any of the secondary angles. I think we had a goal in our last game where Chihuahua backheeled it in. But from where we were sitting, there was a player blocking us, so
Right.
we couldn't see it was backheeled in. And it took a couple different replays, and before we even realized, you know, we thought he just kind of fallen over and the ball had gone in. We didn't even see the subtle little backheel as the player was falling down. So, I mean, a lot of that stuff, it's really hard. Plus, the broadcast booth at Toyota Arena is on the 3rd level. So it's not like we're right there next to the action as it's happening. You know, we're as far up as one could be in that stadium looking down on it. So we don't always get to see it happening in real time the same way a person who's sitting against the glass or even a person watching on TV gets to see, because they get the luxury of looking at it through the camera lens as opposed to looking at it live, which is why it's mostly my job to be following the monitor. But it's hard sometimes to not watch the sport when it's live in front of you. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, you want to be there to enjoy as well as do your job and things like that. Yeah, I think we hear a lot from, you know, fans were like, I was right in front of it and I saw clearly it was a handball. I don't know how the broadcasters missed it. Well, they're 40 feet up in the air and on the other side of the arena, or they're waiting on the replay, or the limited amount of cameras. You know, you can get a camera where like a ref is blocking it or a player is blocking it or whatever. And that handball I mentioned before, the Sonora guys, there's one fan who keeps posting this like replay, but it's a picture of the supposed handball, and I'm like, I've seen Bigfoot pictures that are clearer than this. I don't know what I'm even looking at here. Like what do we...
Right. And even 2 broadcasters in the same booth looking at the same replays and the same live can have 2 completely different opinions.
Yeah.
You know, last year's finals, Craig and I were sitting right next to each other for the broadcast, and Craig swears that the keeper was inside the box for San Diego, and I vehemently disagree, and we're 6 inches from each other, right? And maybe our hearts might be in different locker rooms, but, you know, so even 2 people sitting next to each other and, you know, 2 live witnesses looking at the same incident can have completely different reports about what happened as well too. The naked eye is not always the most trustworthy as well.
Yeah, agreed. All right, cool.
But that's part of the fun, right?
Yeah.
That's part of why we love sports.
Yeah. So hey,
For sure.
thank you very much, and sorry again it took this long. We will definitely have you on again. We'll have you and Philly on because we haven't done that. But as we talked to Philly, and I think Philly agreed, we wanted you on, alone to get your your shot at in the box stardom in front of 12 people or whatever's watching right now. How many people are watching? 12. We got 12, and one of them may be me. Well, I don't think so, but no,
I'm sure one of them is Philly. So a big shout out to Philly and Panda.
Yes.
I love you guys. Yeah, your friendship, and thank you for bringing me along in this journey. One of them is probably my mom, so I should probably say hi, Mom,
Hi, Mom.
as well too.
Hey, Mom.
I really appreciate you guys having me on. Look, I gave up, the finale or the season-ending episode of Wheel of Time, my favorite show, to be on here with you guys. So
is it season-ending episode already? Oh man.
Yeah, episode 8's tonight. So I've missed the last episode of the season of my favorite show to be here. No, I'm just kidding.
No, so Matt, sorry, we gotta extend the show a little bit because we've all talked indoor soccer this show and we haven't gone off to anything. Usually we have at least a couple minutes talking about cake. We haven't mentioned that at all.
Well, you went into your science thing. You did some science time earlier.
That's true. I did science and vaccinations, which I don't even know anything about, but I just made up on the spot. Actually, no. But I haven't. I think I'm missing 2 episodes, including tonight's. But what do you think of the show?
I started reading the books, The Wheel of Time, in high school. And for those of you who don't know, this is an epic series, an epic in length. If you combine the entire Lord of the Rings, the entire Hobbit, the entire Silmarillion, the entire Harry Potter series, throw in War and Peace, and the Bible, combine all of those books, it is still shorter than the entire Wheel of Time series. So it's an incredibly long book series. I started reading them as they came out in mid-90s and have been following it up until the final book was released just a few years ago. The author who started the book series actually passed away before he got a chance to finish it, and a different fantasy author, in partner with his notes and his wife, actually ended up finishing the series. So it's an epic undertaking to follow all of these books from start to finish, and it's something I've been doing since I was 12 years old, right? So I'm very, very passionate about the book series. I've read it multiple times. I've listened to it on audiobooks multiple times, and I was really freaking out that they were finally making a TV show out of it. But the books are really difficult because it's all multi-first person narrative, right? I mean, so it's all so much of people describing to you what's happening and you listening to their inner monologue, which would make for the most boring TV show ever. So they had to kind of completely break the entire series apart and rebuild it to tell similar stories visually. And I think a lot of fans have really been frustrated that it's departed a lot from the books in order to create the same characters, put them in the same places, and tell a similar story. And so if you're willing to accept some radical changes in order to have those characters be the right characters, and I think if you'd never read the books, it's a fantastic TV show. But a lot of people who've read the books have been frustrated with the adaptation. I have not been. I've loved every episode. Did they do things that infuriated me? Yes. Did they do things that I was like, that's exactly how I pictured it? No. I mean, it's all going to be different in your headcanon than what you're actually seeing. But just for something that I've been reading for 25 years and picturing in my mind for 25 years, to see it finally come to fruition and do so in high budget, really beautiful sense, the acting is phenomenal. I mean, cross the board, whether you dislike what they've done with the characters or not, or, I mean, they cast someone in the books who was white as a black person in the show and a million people freaked out. And it's like, if you can just get over some of that stuff that really doesn't matter and just appreciate the story.
Yeah.
Look, it's the #1 streaming show in the world right now. Give it a chance. It's a great, great show. There's a lot of fan-based shows very similar to this one about it as well, too, that I love watching. And, Tyshar Innkeeper, Dusty Wheel, watch Wheel of Time. It's a great, great show. And I hope people go out and just appreciate it as an independent entity.
Yeah. I didn't know. I used to read like the Dragonlance stuff in high school. Never got into any of the Lord of the Rings, any of that, and any of Robert Jordan stuff. But I started listening to audiobooks when I had an hour commute to a job. And The first audiobook I listened to, this was 2008, maybe 2009. It was 25 CDs worth, so 27 hours worth of listening. And Michael Kramer and Kate Redding?
Yeah, Kate Redding and Michael Kramer, husband and wife. Yeah,
I didn't know that. They do such a good job at reading that I don't know if I'd want to actually physically read a book now after listening to them. But each book, well, there was a 14 in the series. Each book is over 1,000 pages. I mean, they're giant, and the storyline goes in very, very far in depth. When it came out, I assumed I would just be the one to watch it. My wife hadn't read any of the books, has nothing about it, doesn't geek out on any sci-fi stuff like I have, but she really likes it too. So it's and she's no part of the book at all. Every once in a while I'll pause and I'll say, hey, just so you know, this is what this means and that's what that means, and then like 10 minutes later they explain it. Like, oh, okay, well I didn't have to explain that, but I figured I would anyway. But yeah, great series. I forgot that you were posting about that. Did you happen to see the weird like one episode off thing that they did maybe 10 years ago or whatever? Okay.
With Billy Zane?
Yes.
How could I forget? So all right, I'm gonna maybe pull back the curtain here a little bit. I am kind of a super nerd when it comes to Wheel of Time. So yes, I've watched it multiple times. It's terrible. The whole thing was really done because the rights to the books were going to go back to the family of Robert Jordan after he passed away. And the only way the studio could keep the rights indefinitely is if they made it into a TV show, whether it worked or not. So they filmed like this 8-minute season 1, episode 1 cold open starring Billy Zane. And it came out unannounced at like 4 a.m. on FX, just so that they could retain the rights if they ever wanted to do anything with that whole idea in the future.
That's hilarious.
It was terrible.
Oh yeah.
And it basically takes the prologue of book 1 and destroys it.
Right.
But it's awful. But yes, I have seen it. It's not good.
We could come up with our own better show like here on In the Box right now with no preparation. It would be better than
You could do that same scene better if you just cast people that cared.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
I think we'll eventually get that scene in the new series, but probably not until next season, because that character that's involved in the prologue of book 1 really isn't even involved in book 1 at all until maybe the last couple pages of the book. But yeah, it's been a fantastic experience. I was at the premiere at the movie theaters a week before the show came out and got to see it ahead of time, and have been way too involved in the online fan community. But the folks, they call themselves the Twitter of Time, and the Wheel of Time folks online are, I mean, such a beautiful community, very similar to what you get in MASL, of just great people coming together over something they love and sharing and enjoying it together. And it's been a blast.
You must be new here. And you said the word. You said that word again.
Oh, I'm sorry. Am I not allowed to reference the boom booms on this show?
No, you can.
You can. You have to turn your face down a little bit and a little frown. A little.
I may or may not watch every episode. Come on now, you guys know that. Sometimes I just like messing with you. I try and pop in the comments from time to time as well too.
Yeah, we appreciate it. So anyway, everyone have a great Christmas, and we will see you next Thursday. On New Year's Eve.
Yes.
Not New Year's Eve. It's New Year's Eve.
Eve squared.
Eve squared. Eve time. Well, yeah, right.
Yeah.
All right, John, I really appreciate you coming on. We have to do this again. I feel a feeling we maybe it should just start with you in the next show and we'll have a 3-hour conversation again, as opposed to feeling like we're cutting short after 2. But yeah, I really appreciate it. Have yourself a great Christmas weekend, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year, everybody. Rise with fury.
All right. Everyone take it easy out there.
I don't know about that, but yeah.
All right. See ya.